Welcome to ASMR History Whisperer, where the secrets of the past come alive in a whisper. Relax as we explore the stories that shaped our world. Today, we embark on an epic journey through time, exploring one of the most historically rich and complex regions in the world, the Mediterranean. Over the last 2,000 years, this vast sea has been the stage for countless empires, battles, trade routes, and cultural exchanges. From the height of the Roman Empire to the rise of Islamic caliphates, from the power struggles of medieval kingdoms to the age of exploration and beyond, the Mediterranean has been at the heart of world history. But how did this region shape the course of civilization, and what legacies did it leave behind that still influence our world today? In this video, we will trace the Mediterranean's history from the year zero, starting with the dominance of the Roman Empire, which transformed the Mediterranean into a mare nostrum, a sea that united the vast territories of Rome. We'll witness the dramatic decline of Rome and the subsequent rise of the Byzantine Empire, which kept the legacy of Rome alive in the East. As the Roman influence waned, new powers emerged, including the rapid expansion of Islamic caliphates, which reshaped the political and cultural landscape of North Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. The medieval period saw the Mediterranean become a battleground during the Crusades, where Christian and Muslim forces clashed over control of the Holy Land, and where the city of Constantinople fell victim to the greed of the Fourth Crusade. Meanwhile, the powerful maritime republics of Venice and Genoa rose to prominence, turning the Mediterranean into a thriving hub of trade, commerce, and cultural exchange. Moving into the early modern period, we'll explore how the Ottoman Empire's expansion into the Mediterranean posed a significant challenge to European powers, culminating in the famous Battle of Lepanto, where the fate of the Mediterranean hung in the balance. The discovery of new trade routes during the Age of Exploration shifted global commerce away from the Mediterranean, but the sea remained strategically important through the Napoleonic Wars and even into the world wars of the 20th century. We'll also delve into key moments that reshaped the Mediterranean's geopolitical landscape, such as the opening of the Suez Canal, which reconnected the Mediterranean to global trade routes, and the complex dynamics of the Arab-Israeli conflicts that have left a lasting impact on the region's modern history. Throughout this journey, we'll encounter legendary figures like Julius Caesar, whose conquests expanded Roman control over the Mediterranean, and Suleiman the Magnificent, who brought Ottoman power to its zenith. We'll explore how the Mediterranean served as a bridge between continents, a battleground for empires, and a cradle of civilization that influenced the rise and fall of great powers. But how did these events connect to each other, and how did they shape the Mediterranean into the region we know today? What were the ripple effects of these momentous changes on the cultures, religions, and economies of the surrounding lands? Stay with us as we uncover the secrets of the Mediterranean's past and discover how this ancient sea continues to influence our world today. As we journey through the 2,000-year history of the Mediterranean, we encounter moments that have not only shaped this ancient sea but also altered the course of world history. The Mediterranean, often seen as the cradle of civilization, has been the stage for empires to rise and fall, for cultures to clash and blend, and for ideas to spread like wildfire. In this exploration, we will delve into 20 key moments that define the Mediterranean's destiny, moments that echo through time, influencing the world as we know it today. Our story begins with one of the most transformative events in the region's history, the rise of the Roman Empire. From a small city-state on the banks of the Tiber River, Rome expanded its reach to encompass the entire Mediterranean basin, turning this vast sea into what they proudly called Mare Nostrum, our sea. This was not just the expansion of a powerful state, it was the beginning of a new era that would redefine the Mediterranean world for centuries to come. The rise of the Roman Empire, shaping the Mediterranean world. The first key moment is the rise of the Roman Empire, a transformative period that redefined the Mediterranean landscape. This was not just a tale of a city's expansion, but the story of how the Mediterranean Sea became the heart of a vast empire, linking diverse cultures, economies, and peoples under a single, dominant power. Rome's journey to Mediterranean supremacy began on the Italian peninsula. Initially a small city-state with local ambitions, Rome gradually expanded its influence by conquering neighboring Latin, Etruscan, and Samnite tribes. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had unified Italy under its rule, which laid the groundwork for its ambitions beyond the peninsula. But controlling Italy was just the beginning. Rome's leaders understood that to truly secure their power, they needed to control the Mediterranean, a sea that was the lifeblood of commerce, culture, and military power in the ancient world. The first significant challenge to Rome's Mediterranean ambitions came from Carthage, a powerful maritime state in North Africa. The Punic Wars, fought between Rome and Carthage, were a series of 3 brutal conflicts that would decide who controlled the Western Mediterranean. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, marked Rome's debut as a naval power. Traditionally a land-based military force, Rome quickly adapted to maritime warfare, building a formidable navy from scratch. This war ended with Rome's victory and its acquisition of Sicily, turning it into Rome's first overseas province and a critical stepping stone for further expansion. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, is perhaps the most famous of these conflicts, largely due to the brilliant Carthaginian general Hannibal, who daringly crossed the Alps with his war elephants to invade Italy. Hannibal's campaign brought the war to Rome's doorstep, inflicting heavy losses on the Roman legions. Despite Hannibal's early victories, Rome's strategic resilience, particularly under the leadership of Scipio Africanus, ultimately turned the tide. Scipio's daring counter-invasion of North Africa forced Hannibal to return home, where he was defeated at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. This victory was decisive, securing Roman dominance over the Western Mediterranean and leading to the annexation of Spain, further expanding Rome's influence. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, was essentially the final nail in Carthage's coffin. By the end of this war, Rome had completely destroyed Carthage, systematically razing the city and enslaving its population. With Carthage eliminated, Rome had no rival left in the West. The Western Mediterranean was now firmly under Roman control, and the stage was set for further expansion into the East. With the West secured, Rome turned its ambitions toward the rich and culturally diverse Eastern Mediterranean. This region was dominated by the Hellenistic kingdoms, the successors of Alexander the Great's empire. Rome's involvement in the East began, as it often did, with conflict. The Macedonian Wars, 214 to 148 BCE, were a series of conflicts against the Kingdom of Macedon, which ended with Rome's victory and the eventual annexation of Greece. The defeat of King Philip V of Macedon in 197 BCE at the Battle of Cynoscephaly marked the beginning of Roman dominance in Greece and the surrounding regions. Rome's expansion into Asia Minor and the Levant continued with its wars against the Seleucid Empire. The Battle of Magnesia in 190 BCE saw the Roman legions decisively defeat the forces of Antiochus III, leading to Roman control over much of Asia Minor. This victory also marked the beginning of Rome's influence over the wealthy cities of the eastern Mediterranean, including those in modern-day Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon. By the 1st century BCE, Rome's dominance over the entire Mediterranean basin was nearly complete. The Mediterranean Sea, now often referred to by the Romans as Mare Nostrum, RC, had become the central artery of the Roman Empire. This dominance allowed Rome to establish an unprecedented level of economic integration across the region. Roman merchant ships filled the sea, transporting goods such as Egyptian grain, Spanish olive oil, Gallic wine, and Eastern luxury items across vast distances, fueling the empire's economy and creating a network of trade routes that connected the farthest reaches of the known world. The Mediterranean under Roman rule wasn't just about economic power, it was also a cultural crucible. Roman and Greek cultures, languages, and religions blended across the empire, creating a shared cultural heritage that would define the Mediterranean world for centuries. Latin became the language of law and administration in the West, while Greek continued to be widely spoken in the eastern provinces. This bilingual nature of the empire facilitated the spread of ideas, technologies, and innovations across the Mediterranean. Roman infrastructure played a crucial role in this integration. The famous Roman roads connected cities across the empire, facilitating military movements, trade, and communication. Aqueducts brought fresh water to cities, supporting growing urban populations and contributing to the health and stability of Roman society. The cities themselves, Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, Carthage, and others, became vibrant centers of commerce, culture, and political power. Each city was a microcosm of the empire, reflecting Rome's ability to incorporate diverse cultures into a cohesive whole. Religiously, the Roman Empire was initially a polytheistic society where Roman gods were worshipped alongside local deities. This religious syncretism helped unify the diverse populations under Roman rule, as people could continue their traditional worship practices while also participating in the state religion. However, the rise of Christianity, which began in the eastern Mediterranean, would eventually challenge this religious structure. By the 4th century CE, Christianity had spread throughout the empire, becoming the dominant religion and further influencing the cultural fabric of the Mediterranean. Despite its strength, the Roman Empire eventually began to show signs of strain. The vastness of the empire made it difficult to govern, and internal divisions began to weaken Rome's control. Economic troubles, political corruption, and the constant threat of external invasions eroded the stability of the empire. By the 3rd century CE, Rome faced significant challenges, leading to a period of crisis and eventual decline. In response to these pressures, the empire was divided in 395 CE into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire. The Western Roman Empire, weakened by internal decay and external threats, fell in 476 CE, marking the end of ancient Rome's control over the Mediterranean. However, the Eastern Roman Empire continued to thrive, preserving Roman traditions, law, and culture for another 1,000 years. The rise of the Roman Empire was a key moment that forever changed the Mediterranean. It transformed the sea from a region of competing powers into a unified, interconnected empire. The legacy of Rome's influence on the Mediterranean is still visible today in the ruins of ancient cities, the remnants of Roman roads, and the enduring impact of Roman law and governance on Western civilization. This was just the beginning of our exploration. As we continue, we'll uncover how the Mediterranean evolved after Rome, through through the rise of new powers, religions, and cultural exchanges that shaped the history of this remarkable region. The destruction of Jerusalem, 70 CE. The second key moment is the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE, an event that not only reshaped the religious and cultural landscape of the Mediterranean but also marked a significant shift in the power dynamics of the Roman Empire and the broader region. The destruction of Jerusalem occurred during the First Jewish-Roman War, a conflict that began in 66 CE as a result of growing tensions between the Jewish population of Judea and the Roman authorities. The war was fueled by a combination of religious, political, and economic factors, with the Jewish population resisting Roman rule and the imposition of taxes, as well as the presence of Roman troops in their sacred city. Jerusalem, the spiritual and cultural heart of the Jewish people, was heavily fortified and prepared for a siege. The city was not only a religious center but also a symbol of Jewish identity and resistance against Roman oppression. The Roman response to the Jewish revolt was swift and brutal. Under the command of General Titus, the Roman legions were dispatched to Judea with the goal of crushing the rebellion and reasserting Roman authority over the province. The siege of Jerusalem was one of the most devastating military campaigns in Roman history. Titus's forces surrounded the city, cutting off supplies and subjecting the inhabitants to starvation and disease. The Jewish defenders, though determined, were outmatched by the well-equipped and disciplined Roman legions. The siege lasted several months, during which the situation inside the city became increasingly desperate. Famine and infighting among the Jewish factions weakened their ability to resist the Roman onslaught. In August of 70 CE, the Romans breached Jerusalem's walls and began their final assault. The destruction that followed was catastrophic. The Roman soldiers sacked the city, looting its treasures and slaughtering thousands of its inhabitants. The most significant and symbolic act of destruction was the burning of the Second Temple, the holiest site in Judaism. The temple's destruction was a devastating blow to the Jewish people, as it not only represented the loss of their religious center but also the end of an era in Jewish history. The fall of Jerusalem had profound consequences for the Jewish population. The destruction of the temple and the city led to the dispersal of the Jewish people across the Roman Empire and beyond, marking the beginning of the Jewish diaspora. Many Jews were taken as slaves, while others fled to different parts of the Mediterranean, where they established communities that would endure for centuries. This dispersion had a lasting impact on Jewish culture, religion, and identity, as the Jewish people adapted to life in exile while maintaining their religious traditions and sense of community. For the Roman Empire, the destruction of Jerusalem was a demonstration of the might of Roman power and a warning to other provinces considering rebellion. The victory solidified Roman control over Judea and the eastern Mediterranean, allowing the empire to maintain its dominance in the region. However, the brutal suppression of the Jewish revolt also left a legacy of resentment and tension between the Roman authorities and the Jewish population, which would continue to simmer in the following centuries. The destruction of Jerusalem also had significant religious and cultural implications for the broader Mediterranean world. In the wake of the temple's destruction, Judaism underwent a transformation as it adapted to life without a central religious institution. Rabbinic Judaism emerged as the dominant form of Jewish practice, focusing on the study of the Torah and the application of Jewish law in daily life. This shift allowed Judaism to survive and thrive in the diaspora, even in the absence of a temple. Moreover, the events of 70 CE had a profound impact on the development of Christianity. At this time, Christianity was still a small, emerging sect within Judaism. The destruction of the temple and the subsequent dispersal of the Jewish population created a context in which Christianity began to distinguish itself more clearly from Judaism, eventually becoming a separate religion that spread across the Mediterranean and beyond. In the larger context of Mediterranean history, the destruction of Jerusalem was a key moment that reshaped the religious, cultural, and political landscape of the region. It marked the end of Jewish autonomy in Judea and the beginning of a long period of exile and diaspora for the Jewish people. It also contributed to the broader religious transformations occurring in the Mediterranean, particularly the rise of Christianity, which would go on to play a dominant role in the region's history. As we continue our journey through the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the destruction of Jerusalem stands out as a pivotal event that not only altered the course of Jewish history but also had far-reaching implications for the entire Mediterranean world. This moment of devastation and change set the stage for the complex religious and cultural dynamics that would define the region for centuries to come. The founding of Constantinople, 330 CE, and the rise of the East Roman Empire. The third key moment is the founding of Constantinople in 330 CE, an event that not only marked the beginning of a new era for the Roman Empire but also solidified the Eastern Mediterranean's role as a center of power, culture, and trade for centuries to come. By the early 4th century, the Roman Empire was increasingly challenged by internal divisions, economic difficulties, and external pressures, particularly in its western provinces. Recognizing the need for a strategic shift, Emperor Constantine the Great decided to establish a new capital for the empire in the east, a decision that would profoundly reshape the future of the Mediterranean world. Constantine chose the ancient city of Byzantium, located on the strategic crossroads of Europe and Asia, as the site for this new capital. Byzantium's location on the Bosphorus Strait made it a natural hub for trade and defense, controlling the key waterway that connected the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. By founding Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Constantine ensured that the Eastern Mediterranean would remain a focal point of imperial power even as the Western Roman Empire began to decline. The establishment of Constantinople was more than just a shift in geography, it represented a new vision for the Roman Empire. Constantine invested heavily in the city's development, building grand structures such as the Hagia Sophia, lavish palaces, and strong defensive walls. The city quickly grew into a vibrant metropolis, attracting people from all over the empire and becoming a melting pot of cultures, languages, and religions. As the capital of the East Roman Empire, Constantinople became the seat of power for emperors who ruled over the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire. These provinces were economically and culturally rich, including regions such as Greece, Asia Minor, Egypt, and the Levant. The East Roman Empire, with Constantinople at its heart, preserved many of the traditions and institutions of ancient Rome, but it also developed its own distinct identity over time. One of the most significant aspects of Constantinople's founding was its role in the spread and institutionalization of Christianity. Constantine himself converted to Christianity, and under his reign, the religion was not only legalized but also promoted as the empire's official faith. Constantinople quickly became a center of Christian learning, theology, and administration. The city hosted several important church councils, which helped to define the doctrines and structure of early Christianity, further cementing its influence across the Mediterranean. The East Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, also played a crucial role in maintaining the stability and continuity of the Roman Empire as the western half fell into decline. While the Western Roman Empire collapsed under the weight of barbarian invasions and internal decay in the 5th century, the East Roman Empire continued to thrive. Constantinople's formidable walls and strategic location helped the city withstand numerous sieges, while its wealth and resources allowed the empire to maintain a strong military and bureaucracy. The East Roman Empire was not just a political and military powerhouse, it was also a center of art, culture, and intellectual life. The city of Constantinople became a beacon of learning, preserving and transmitting the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans while also fostering new developments in art, architecture, and literature. The East Roman Empire's cultural and intellectual achievements had a profound influence on the medieval Mediterranean world and beyond. In the larger context of Mediterranean history, the founding of Constantinople and the rise of the East Roman Empire marked a significant shift in the balance of power from west to east. The Eastern Mediterranean became the dominant region in the empire, with Constantinople serving as the central hub of a vast and complex network of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. This shift also set the stage for future conflicts and interactions with emerging powers in the region, including the Islamic caliphates and the emerging kingdoms of Europe. As we continue to explore the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the founding of Constantinople stands out as a transformative event that redefined the region's political, cultural, and religious landscape. The legacy of Constantinople and the East Roman Empire would endure for centuries, influencing the development of the Mediterranean world long after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, for 76 CE, a turning point in Mediterranean history. The fourth key moment is the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, a monumental event that marked the end of ancient Rome's dominance over the Mediterranean and ushered in a new era of fragmentation, upheaval, and transformation. By the 4th century, the Roman Empire, which had once stretched across the entire Mediterranean basin, was showing signs of severe strain. The empire had grown too vast to manage effectively, and it was plagued by a series of internal problems, economic decline, political instability, and a growing divide between the wealthy elites and the struggling masses. Additionally, external pressures from various barbarian tribes along the empire's borders were becoming increasingly difficult to repel. To address these challenges, Emperor Diocletian took the dramatic step of dividing the empire into two halves in 285 CE, creating the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, East Roman Empire. This division was meant to make governance more manageable, with each half ruled by its own emperor. However, the split also highlighted the growing differences between the two regions. While the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, managed to maintain stability and even thrive, the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome and later Ravenna, faced an increasingly dire situation. The Western Roman Empire was beset by a series of crises that compounded its vulnerabilities. Economic troubles, including inflation and a failing tax system, weakened the empire's financial base. The devaluation of Roman currency led to a collapse in trade, and the once vibrant economy of the Western Mediterranean began to falter. The agricultural system, which had supported Rome for centuries, also declined, leading to food shortages and a reliance on imports from the eastern provinces. Politically, the Western Roman Empire was plagued by a succession of weak and ineffective emperors, many of whom were more interested in their own survival than in the welfare of the empire. Civil wars and power struggles further destabilized the empire, eroding the authority of the central government. The military, once the backbone of Roman power, was also in decline. The legions, which had traditionally been composed of Roman citizens, increasingly relied on barbarian mercenaries whose loyalty was often questionable. The most significant threat to the Western Roman Empire, however, came from the barbarian tribes that had been pressing against the empire's borders for centuries. These tribes, including the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, had been gradually encroaching on Roman territory, seeking land and wealth. The empire's inability to effectively manage these threats culminated in a series of catastrophic events that would ultimately lead to its downfall. One of the most pivotal moments in this process was the sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 CE. Led by their king, Alaric, the Visigoths breached the city's walls and looted it for 3 days. This event sent shockwaves throughout the Mediterranean world. Rome, the Eternal City, which had stood as the symbol of Roman power and civilization for centuries, was sacked by what were considered barbarians. The psychological impact of this event was immense. It shattered the image of Rome as an invincible power and demonstrated the vulnerability of the Western Roman Empire. This situation only deteriorated further in the following decades. The Vandals, another Germanic tribe, crossed into North Africa, one of the Western Empire's most prosperous regions, and established a kingdom there. In 455 CE, they sacked Rome again, causing further devastation. The loss of North Africa was particularly damaging, as it cut off the grain supply that fed the population of Rome and other cities in the Western Mediterranean. Amidst this turmoil, the Western Roman Empire continued to lose territory and influence. The Huns, under their fearsome leader Attila, invaded Italy in 452 CE, although they were eventually driven back. Despite these desperate attempts to fend off the invaders, the Western Roman Empire's decline seemed inevitable. The final blow came in 476 CE when the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. This event is traditionally marked as the end of the Western Roman Empire. Odoacer declared himself king of Italy, and the Western Roman Empire, which had once ruled over vast territories and countless peoples, ceased to exist as a political entity. The fall of the Western Roman Empire had profound consequences for the Mediterranean world. It marked the end of centralized Roman authority in the West and the beginning of a new era characterized by fragmentation and the rise of various barbarian kingdoms. The political vacuum left by Rome's collapse was filled by these new powers, each vying for control over the remnants of the empire. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire also led to significant social and economic changes. The intricate trade networks that had connected the Mediterranean began to unravel, leading to a decline in commerce and urban life in the West. Many cities, once bustling centers of culture and trade, fell into decline or were abandoned altogether. The infrastructure that Rome had built, its roads, aqueducts, and public buildings, began to decay, and the Western Mediterranean entered a period often referred to as the Dark Ages. Culturally, the fall of the Western Roman Empire marked the end of the classical world in the West. The traditions of Roman law, literature, and art were gradually supplanted by the cultures of the barbarian kingdoms. Latin, once the language of administration and learning, began to evolve into the various Romance languages that we know today. The Roman Catholic Church, which had survived the empire's collapse, emerged as a powerful institution, filling the void left by the imperial government and playing a central role in the preservation and transmission of classical knowledge. In the East, however, the East Roman Empire continued to thrive, preserving the legacy of Rome and maintaining control over the eastern Mediterranean. Constantinople, with its formidable defenses and strategic location, remained a beacon of stability and prosperity. The East Roman Empire, often referred to as the Byzantine Empire, would go on to influence the development of medieval Europe and the Mediterranean for centuries. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was a watershed moment in Mediterranean history. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter in the region's development. The once unified Mediterranean world was now divided, with the West falling into chaos and the East continuing the Roman legacy in a transformed form. This key moment set the stage for the medieval period and the complex interplay of powers, cultures, and religions that would shape the Mediterranean for the next millennium. The rise of Islam and the Arab conquests, 7th century, transforming the Mediterranean. The fifth key moment is the rise of Islam in the 7th century and the subsequent Arab conquests that reshaped the political, cultural, and economic landscape of the Mediterranean. This period marked a profound shift in the balance of power in the region, leading to the emergence of a new religious and cultural force that would leave a lasting impact on the Mediterranean world. The story begins in the early 7th century, in the Arabian Peninsula, where Islam was founded by the Prophet Muhammad. Born in Mecca around 570 CE, Muhammad received what he believed to be divine revelations, which were later compiled into the Quran, the holy book of Islam. His teachings emphasized monotheism, social justice, and the submission to the will of Allah. Initially, Muhammad's message was met with resistance in Mecca, but he eventually gained a following and established a community of believers known as Muslims. In 622 CE, facing persecution in Mecca, Muhammad and his followers migrated to the nearby city of Yathrib, later known as Medina. This event, known as the Hijra, marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar and is a pivotal moment in the history of Islam. In Medina, Muhammad became both a spiritual and political leader, uniting the Arabian tribes under the banner of Islam. Over the next decade, he and his followers engaged in a series of military campaigns that eventually led to the conquest of Mecca and the unification of the Arabian Peninsula under Islamic rule. Following Muhammad's death in 632 CE, leadership of the Muslim community passed to a series of caliphs who were both religious and political leaders. The first four caliphs, known as the Rashidun, rightly guided caliphs, were instrumental in expanding the Islamic State beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Under their leadership, the Islamic Caliphate rapidly expanded through a series of military conquests that brought vast territories in the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe under Muslim control. The Arab conquests of the 7th century had a profound impact on the Mediterranean world. The first major target of the Muslim armies was the Sasanian Empire in Persia, which was quickly defeated and incorporated into the Islamic Caliphate. The Byzantines, who controlled much of the eastern Mediterranean, were also targeted. In a series of decisive battles, including the Battle of Yarmouk in 636 CE, the Muslim armies defeated the Byzantines and captured key territories, including Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. The conquest of Egypt was particularly significant for the Mediterranean. Egypt was a wealthy and strategically important province, known as the breadbasket of the eastern Mediterranean due to its abundant grain production. By taking control of Egypt, the Islamic Caliphate gained access to vital resources and established a strong foothold in North Africa. From there, the Muslim armies continued their westward expansion, conquering the coastal regions of North Africa and establishing new cities and trading centers, such as Kairouan in modern-day Tunisia. As the Islamic Caliphate expanded across North Africa, it encountered the Berber tribes, who initially resisted but eventually converted to Islam and integrated into the expanding Muslim world. The Arab-Berber alliance proved to be a formidable force, and by the early 8th century, Muslim armies had crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula. In 711 CE, under the leadership of Tariq ibn Ziyad, the Muslim forces defeated the Visigothic kingdom in the Battle of Guadalete, marking the beginning of Islamic rule in Spain. Over the next few decades, the majority of the Iberian Peninsula came under Muslim control, establishing what would become known as Al-Andalus. The rapid expansion of the Islamic Caliphate and the establishment of Al-Andalus had a transformative effect on the Mediterranean. The spread of Islam introduced new religious, cultural, and intellectual traditions to the region. The Islamic world became a center of learning and innovation, with major cities such as Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Cordoba becoming hubs of scholarship, science, and culture. The Islamic Golden Age, which flourished from the 8th to the 13th century, saw significant advancements in fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, many of which were disseminated across the Mediterranean and influenced European thought. Economically, the rise of the Islamic Caliphate revitalized trade across the Mediterranean. Muslim merchants played a key role in connecting the Mediterranean with the Indian Ocean and the Silk Road, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures between East and West. The Islamic world became a vital part of the Mediterranean economy, with cities like Alexandria, Tunis, and Valencia serving as important trading centers. The rise of Islam and the Arab conquests also had a profound impact on the cultural and demographic makeup of the Mediterranean. The spread of Islam brought new populations, languages, and traditions into the region, creating a rich and diverse cultural tapestry. The Arabic language became a lingua franca in many parts of the Mediterranean, facilitating communication and exchange across different regions. However, the expansion of the Islamic Caliphate also led to tensions and conflicts with the existing powers in the Mediterranean, particularly the East Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire, though weakened by the loss of its territories in the Levant and North Africa, remained a significant power in the Eastern Mediterranean. The two empires would continue to vie for control over the region, leading to centuries of intermittent warfare, most notably during the Crusades. In the larger context of Mediterranean history, the rise of Islam and the Arab conquests marked a new era of transformation and integration. The Mediterranean, once dominated by the Roman and Byzantine empires, became a more diverse and interconnected region, with Islamic civilization playing a central role in shaping its development. The legacy of this period can still be seen today in the cultural, religious, and linguistic diversity of the Mediterranean world. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the rise of Islam and the Arab conquests stand out as a pivotal event that not only transformed the region but also laid the foundation for the complex and dynamic interactions that have defined the Mediterranean for centuries. The rise of Islam and the Arab conquests, 7th century transforming the Mediterranean. The fifth key moment is the rise of Islam in the 7th century and the subsequent Arab conquests that reshaped the political, cultural, and economic landscape of the Mediterranean. This period marked a profound shift in the balance of power in the region, leading to the emergence of a new religious and cultural force that would leave a lasting impact on the Mediterranean world. The story begins in the early 7th century, in the Arabian Peninsula, where Islam was founded by the Prophet Muhammad. Born in Mecca around 570 CE, Muhammad received what he believed to be divine revelations, which were later compiled into the Quran, the holy book of Islam. His teachings emphasized monotheism, social justice, and the submission to the will of Allah. Initially, Muhammad's message was met with resistance in Mecca, but he eventually gained a following and established a community of believers known as Muslims. In 622 CE, facing persecution in Mecca, Muhammad and his followers migrated to the nearby city of Yathrib, later known as Medina. This event, known as the Hijra, marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar and is a pivotal moment in the history of Islam. In Medina, Muhammad became both a spiritual and political leader, uniting the Arabian tribes under the banner of Islam. Over the next decade, he and his followers engaged in a series of military campaigns that eventually led to the conquest of Mecca and the unification of the Arabian Peninsula under Islamic rule. Following Muhammad's death in 632 CE, leadership of the Muslim community passed to a series of caliphs who were both religious and political leaders. The first four caliphs, known as the Rashidun, rightly guided caliphs, were instrumental in expanding the Islamic State beyond the Arabian Peninsula. Under their leadership, the Islamic Caliphate rapidly expanded through a series of military conquests that brought vast territories in the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe under Muslim control. The Arab conquests of the 7th century had a profound impact on the Mediterranean world. The first major target of the Muslim armies was the Sasanian Empire in Persia, which was quickly defeated and incorporated into the Islamic Caliphate. The Byzantines, who controlled much of the eastern Mediterranean, were also targeted. In a series of decisive battles, including the Battle of Yarmouk in 636 CE, the Muslim armies defeated the Byzantines and captured key territories, including Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. The conquest of Egypt was particularly significant for the Mediterranean. Egypt was a wealthy and strategically important province, known as the breadbasket of the eastern Mediterranean due to its abundant grain production. By taking control of Egypt, the Islamic Caliphate gained access to vital resources and established a strong foothold in North Africa. From there, the Muslim armies continued their westward expansion, conquering the coastal regions of North Africa and establishing new cities and trading centers, such as Kairouan in modern-day Tunisia. As the Islamic Caliphate expanded across North Africa, it encountered the Berber tribes, who initially resisted but eventually converted to Islam and integrated into the expanding Muslim world. The Arab-Berber alliance proved to be a formidable force, and by the early 8th century, Muslim armies had crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula. In 711 CE, under the leadership of Tariq ibn Ziyad, the Muslim forces defeated the Visigothic kingdom in the Battle of Guadalete, marking the beginning of Islamic rule in Spain. Over the next few decades, the majority of the Iberian Peninsula came under Muslim control, establishing what would become known as Al-Andalus. The rapid expansion of the Islamic Caliphate and the establishment of Al-Andalus had a transformative effect on the Mediterranean. The spread of Islam introduced new religious, cultural, and intellectual traditions to the region. The Islamic world became a center of learning and innovation, with major cities such as Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Cordoba becoming hubs of scholarship, science, and culture. The Islamic Golden Age, which flourished from the 8th to the 13th century, saw significant advancements in fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, many of which were disseminated across the Mediterranean and influenced European thought. Economically, the rise of the Islamic Caliphate revitalized trade across the Mediterranean. Muslim merchants played a key role in connecting the Mediterranean with the Indian Ocean and the Silk Road, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures between East and West. The Islamic world became a vital part of the Mediterranean economy, with cities like Alexandria, Tunis, and Valencia serving as important trading centers. The rise of Islam and the Arab conquests also had a profound impact on the cultural and demographic makeup of the Mediterranean. The spread of Islam brought new populations, languages, and traditions into the region, creating a rich and diverse cultural tapestry. The Arabic language became a lingua franca in many parts of the Mediterranean, facilitating communication and exchange across different regions. However, the expansion of the Islamic Caliphate also led to tensions and conflicts with the existing powers in the Mediterranean, particularly the East Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire, though weakened by the loss of its territories in the Levant and North Africa, remained a significant power in the Eastern Mediterranean. The two empires would continue to vie for control over the region, leading to centuries of intermittent warfare, most notably during the Crusades. In the larger context of Mediterranean history, the rise of Islam and the Arab conquests marked a new era of transformation and integration. The Mediterranean, once dominated by the Roman and Byzantine empires, became a more diverse and interconnected region, with Islamic civilization playing a central role in shaping its development. The legacy of this period can still be seen today in the cultural, religious, and linguistic diversity of the Mediterranean world. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the rise of Islam and the Arab conquests stand out as a pivotal event that not only transformed the region but also laid the foundation for the complex and dynamic interactions that have defined the Mediterranean for centuries. The establishment of the Umayyad Emirate of Córdoba, 756. The dawn of Islamic Spain. The sixth key moment is the establishment of the Umayyad Emirate of Córdoba in 756, an event that not only marked the beginning of Islamic rule in the Iberian Peninsula but also created one of the most prosperous and culturally vibrant regions in medieval Europe. This period, known as Al-Andalus, would leave an enduring legacy on the cultural, intellectual, and economic landscape of the Mediterranean. The origins of the Umayyad Emirate in Al-Andalus can be traced back to the wider context of the Arab conquests in the 7th and 8th centuries. After the rapid expansion of the Islamic Caliphate across North Africa, Muslim forces crossed into the Iberian Peninsula in 711 under the leadership of Tariq ibn Ziyad. The initial invasion was swift and decisive, culminating in the defeat of the Visigothic king Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. Over the next few years, Muslim forces consolidated their control over much of the Iberian Peninsula, establishing Islamic rule in the region. However, the political landscape of the Islamic world underwent a significant change in 750 when the Umayyad Caliphate, which had ruled from Damascus, was overthrown by the Abbasid family. The Abbasids established a new caliphate with its capital in Baghdad, but this shift in power led to the downfall of the Umayyad dynasty. Most members of the Umayyad family were killed in the Abbasid Revolution, but one surviving Umayyad prince, Abd al-Rahmani, managed to escape and eventually made his way to the far western reaches of the Islamic world, the Iberian Peninsula. In 756, Abd al-Rahmani established the Umayyad Emirate of Córdoba, declaring himself emir and effectively creating an independent Muslim state in Al-Andalus, separate from the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. This event was crucial in shaping the history of the Mediterranean, as it marked the beginning of a distinct Islamic civilization in Western Europe, one that would flourish for centuries. The establishment of the Umayyad Emirate brought stability to Al-Andalus, which had previously been divided among various Arab and Berber factions. Under Abd al-Rahmani's leadership, Córdoba became the political, cultural, and economic center of Islamic Spain. The emirate was characterized by its relative tolerance and inclusivity, allowing Christians, Jews, and Muslims to coexist and contribute to the region's prosperity. This atmosphere of convivencia, coexistence, became one of the defining features of Al-Andalus. Economically, the Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba was one of the wealthiest regions in the Mediterranean. The fertile lands of the Iberian Peninsula, combined with advanced agricultural techniques introduced by the Arabs, such as irrigation systems and the cultivation of new crops like citrus fruits, cotton, and rice, led to a flourishing agricultural economy. The wealth generated from agriculture supported a vibrant urban economy, with Cordoba, Seville, and Toledo emerging as major centers of trade, industry, and culture. Cordoba, in particular, became one of the most important cities in the Mediterranean world. By the 10th century, it was the largest city in Europe, with a population of over 500,000 people. The city was renowned for its architectural splendor, exemplified by the Great Mosque of Cordoba, one of the most iconic and innovative structures of the medieval Islamic world. The mosque's intricate design, featuring horseshoe arches and a vast hypostyle hall, reflected the artistic and architectural achievements of Al-Andalus. Cordoba was also a center of learning and intellectual activity. The Umayyad rulers of Al-Andalus were great patrons of the arts and sciences, and they established libraries, schools, and universities that attracted scholars from across the Islamic world and beyond. The city became a hub for the translation of ancient Greek and Roman texts into Arabic, preserving and expanding upon the knowledge of classical antiquity. This intellectual activity in Al-Andalus played a crucial role in the transmission of classical knowledge to Europe, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance centuries later. The Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba also contributed to the cultural and religious diversity of the Mediterranean. The region's population was a mix of Arabs, Berbers, Iberians, Jews, and Christians, each contributing to the rich cultural tapestry of Al-Andalus. The coexistence of different religious communities fostered an environment of mutual influence where Islamic, Christian, and Jewish traditions blended in unique and creative ways. This cultural synthesis is evident in the art, architecture, literature, and music of Al-Andalus, which combined elements from across the Mediterranean and beyond. However, the Umayyad Emirate was not without its challenges. Throughout its history, the emirate faced internal divisions, particularly between the Arab elite and the Berber tribes who had played a key role in the initial conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. Additionally, the emirate was constantly threatened by Christian kingdoms in the north, who sought to reclaim the peninsula for Christendom. These tensions would eventually lead to the fragmentation of the emirate and the rise of the Christian Reconquista in the following centuries. Despite these challenges, the Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba left an indelible mark on the Mediterranean world. It was a beacon of Islamic civilization in Western Europe, a place where different cultures and religions came together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The legacy of Al-Andalus can still be seen today in the architecture, language, and culture of Spain and the wider Mediterranean region. The establishment of the Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba was a key moment that transformed the Western Mediterranean, creating a new center of power, culture, and learning that would influence the region for centuries. As we continue to explore the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of Al-Andalus stands out as a remarkable example of how the Mediterranean served as a bridge between civilizations, connecting East and West in a dynamic and enduring way. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, a clash of civilizations in the Mediterranean. The seventh key moment is the First Crusade, which took place from 1096 to 1099. This event was a pivotal moment in the history of the Mediterranean, marking the beginning of a series of religious and military conflicts between Christian and Muslim powers that would reshape the region for centuries. The First Crusade not only deepened the divide between the Christian and Muslim worlds, but also set the stage for centuries of conflict and cooperation across the Mediterranean. The roots of the First Crusade can be traced back to the 11th century, a period of growing tension and conflict between Christian Europe and the Muslim world. By this time, the Islamic caliphates had controlled much of the Mediterranean's southern and eastern shores for centuries, with key cities like Jerusalem, Antioch, and Alexandria under Muslim rule. Meanwhile, the Christian kingdoms of Europe were becoming increasingly powerful and assertive, particularly following the success of the Reconquista in Spain, where Christian forces had begun reclaiming territories from Muslim rule. The immediate catalyst for the First Crusade was a call to arms issued by Pope Urban II in 1095. At the Council of Clermont, the Pope delivered a passionate speech, urging the Christian nobility of Europe to take up the cross and launch a holy war to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. Urban's appeal was not solely religious. It was also a response to the pleas for help from the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, whose empire was under threat from the advancing Seljuk Turks. Urban saw the crusade as an opportunity to strengthen the Church's influence, unite the warring Christian states of Europe under a common cause, and assist the Byzantine Empire, which had long been a buffer against Muslim expansion into Europe. The response to Urban's call was overwhelming. Thousands of knights, soldiers, and ordinary people from across Europe took up the cross, embarking on a perilous journey to the Holy Land. The motivations of these crusaders were varied. Some were driven by deep religious fervor and the desire to secure salvation, while others were motivated by the promise of land, wealth, and glory. The movement quickly gained momentum, and by 1096, a massive army of crusaders had assembled, ready to march to the east. The First Crusade was a complex and multifaceted campaign marked by a series of grueling battles, sieges, and hardships. The journey to the Holy Land was arduous, with many crusaders perishing from hunger, disease, and the harsh conditions of the long march. The crusaders faced formidable opponents, particularly the Seljuk Turks, who controlled much of Anatolia and had previously dealt a devastating defeat to the Byzantine army at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. Despite these challenges, the Crusaders achieved a series of remarkable victories. One of the most significant early successes was the capture of the city of Nicaea in 1097, which had been a major stronghold of the Seljuk Turks. The fall of Nicaea was a crucial moment in the campaign, as it opened the way for the Crusaders to advance deeper into Anatolia and towards the Levant. The Crusaders continued their advance, eventually reaching the city of Antioch, one of the most important cities in the eastern Mediterranean. The Siege of Antioch, which lasted from October 1097 to June 1098, was one of the most grueling and pivotal moments of the First Crusade. The city was heavily fortified, and the Crusaders faced not only a determined Muslim garrison but also severe shortages of food and supplies. The situation became so desperate that some Crusaders resorted to cannibalism to survive. However, despite the odds, the Crusaders managed to capture Antioch through a combination of military prowess, cunning, and sheer determination. The fall of Antioch was a major turning point in the crusade, as it provided the Crusaders with a critical base of operations for their final push towards Jerusalem. In 1099, after 3 years of brutal campaigning, the Crusaders finally reached their ultimate goal, the city of Jerusalem. The Siege of Jerusalem, which took place in June and July of 1099, was the climax of the First Crusade. The city was defended by a relatively small Muslim garrison, but the Crusaders faced formidable obstacles, including Jerusalem's massive walls and the searing heat of the summer. The Crusaders launched a series of assaults on the city, eventually breaching its defenses and storming Jerusalem on July 15, 1099. What followed was a massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, a bloodbath that shocked the medieval world and left a lasting stain on the Crusaders' legacy. The capture of Jerusalem marked the culmination of the First Crusade, with the Crusaders establishing the Kingdom of Jerusalem and several other Crusader states in the Levant. The First Crusade had profound and far-reaching consequences for the Mediterranean world. For the Christian powers of Europe, the Crusade was hailed as a great victory and a divine vindication of their faith. The establishment of the Crusader states in the Levant created new political entities that would become focal points of conflict and cooperation between the Christian and Muslim worlds. For the Muslim world, the loss of Jerusalem and other key cities to the Crusaders was a devastating blow. The First Crusade deepened the animosity between the Christian and Muslim worlds, leading to a series of retaliatory campaigns and counter-crusades. The Muslim leaders, particularly those of the Seljuk Turks and later the Ayyubid dynasty under Saladin, would spend the next century trying to reclaim the lost territories and expel the Crusaders from the Holy Land. The First Crusade also had significant implications for the Byzantine Empire and the broader Mediterranean region. The Crusade temporarily bolstered the Byzantine Empire by relieving the pressure from the Seljuk Turks, but it also created new tensions between the Byzantine and Western European powers. The Crusaders' presence in the Eastern Mediterranean introduced a new dynamic to the region's politics, with the Crusader states often acting independently and sometimes in conflict with their supposed Byzantine allies. Economically, the First Crusade opened new trade routes and markets in the Eastern Mediterranean, fostering increased commerce between Europe and the Levant. Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa played a crucial role in supporting the Crusaders with ships and supplies, and they were rewarded with lucrative trading privileges and access to Eastern markets. This economic boost contributed to the rise of the Italian maritime republics as major powers in the Mediterranean. Culturally, the First Crusade led to a greater exchange of ideas, knowledge, and technology between the Christian and Muslim worlds. While the Crusades are often remembered for their violence and destruction, they also facilitated the transmission of scientific and philosophical knowledge from the Islamic world to Europe, helping to lay the foundations for the Renaissance. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the First Crusade was a key moment that set the stage for centuries of conflict, coexistence, and cultural exchange between the Christian and Muslim worlds. The Mediterranean, as the crossroads of these two great civilizations, became a battleground where religious, political, and economic interests intersected, shaping the course of history for generations to come. The Fourth Crusade and the sack of Constantinople, 1204, the fall of an empire in the changing Mediterranean. The eighth key moment is the Fourth Crusade, culminating in the sack of Constantinople in 1204. This event was one of the most shocking and consequential episodes in medieval Mediterranean history, leading to the profound weakening of the East Roman Empire and permanently altering the balance of power in the region. The Fourth Crusade was originally intended to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control, following the loss of the city to Saladin in 1187. However, the crusade took an unexpected and dramatic turn that ultimately led to the destruction of one of Christendom's greatest cities, Constantinople. This episode reveals the complexities and contradictions of the crusading movement, where religious fervor, political ambition, and economic interests collided in devastating ways. The background to the Fourth Crusade lies in the broader context of the Crusades as a whole. By the late 12th century, the enthusiasm for Crusades had waned somewhat in Europe, particularly after the failures of the Second and Third Crusades to secure lasting control over the Holy Land. Nevertheless, in 1198, Pope Innocent III called for a new crusade aiming to restore Christian control over Jerusalem and other holy sites. The response to the Pope's call was lukewarm at first, but eventually a group of French, Flemish, and Italian nobles took up the cross, forming the core of what would become the Fourth Crusade. From the beginning, the Fourth Crusade was plagued by logistical and financial difficulties. The Crusaders lacked the necessary funds to transport their armies to the Holy Land, and they turned to the Maritime Republic of Venice for assistance. Venice, under the leadership of the shrewd and ambitious Doge Enrico Dandolo, agreed to provide ships for the Crusaders, but at a steep price. When the Crusaders were unable to pay the full amount, Dandolo offered a compromise. The Crusaders would help Venice capture the city of Zara, now Zadar in Croatia, a rebellious city that was a rival to Venetian trade interests. The decision to attack Zara, a Christian city, was highly controversial and foreshadowed the broader moral and political compromises that would characterize the Fourth Crusade. The siege and capture of Zara in 1202 alienated many of the more pious crusaders and drew condemnation from the Pope, who excommunicated the entire crusading force as a result. However, the Crusaders, now indebted to Venice and far from their original goal, found themselves embroiled in a series of further complications. At this juncture, the Crusaders became involved in the internal politics of the East Rome Empire. The Byzantine Empire, which had long been a powerful force in the Eastern Mediterranean, was undergoing a period of political instability. The Emperor Isaac II Angelos had been deposed and blinded by his brother Alexios III Angelos, who seized the throne in 1195. Isaac's son, Alexios IV, fled to the west and sought the assistance of the Crusaders to reclaim his father's throne. In return, he promised vast sums of money, military support, and the reunification of the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. Tempted by the promise of wealth and the possibility of securing a powerful ally in the East, the Crusaders agreed to divert their expedition to Constantinople. In 1203, they arrived at the gates of the great city, launching a campaign to restore Alexios IV to power. The Crusaders' military superiority, combined with internal dissent within the city, led to the overthrow of Alexios III and the restoration of Isaac II and his son to the throne. However, the situation quickly deteriorated. The promises made by Alexios IV to the Crusaders proved impossible to fulfill, leading to growing tensions between the Western Knights and the Byzantine population. In early 1204, a revolt broke out in Constantinople, resulting in the murder of Alexios IV and the installation of a new emperor, Alexios V Doukas, who was hostile to the Crusaders. With their promises unfulfilled and their situation increasingly precarious, the Crusaders made the fateful decision to capture Constantinople for themselves. In April 1204, after a brutal siege, the Crusaders breached the city's formidable defenses and unleashed a wave of destruction and looting. The sack of Constantinople was one of the most devastating events of the medieval period. The Crusaders looted the city's treasures, desecrated its churches, and massacred its inhabitants. Priceless works of art, religious relics, and manuscripts were destroyed or carried off to the west, many of them ending up in Venice and other European cities. The impact of the sack of Constantinople was profound and far-reaching. For the Byzantine Empire, the events of 1204 marked the beginning of a catastrophic decline. The empire was fractured into several competing states, including the Latin Empire, which was established by the Crusaders in Constantinople, and the Empire of Nicaea, which became a center of Byzantine resistance. Although the Byzantines eventually recaptured Constantinople in 1261, the empire never fully recovered from the trauma of 1204. It remained weakened, vulnerable to further attacks, and increasingly irrelevant in the broader context of Mediterranean politics. The sack of Constantinople also had significant consequences for the wider Mediterranean world. The establishment of the Latin Empire and other Crusader states in the Aegean and the Balkans altered the balance of power in the region. Venice, which had played a central role in the Fourth Crusade, emerged as one of the chief beneficiaries of the events of 1204. The Venetians gained control over key ports and islands in the Aegean, expanding their maritime empire and solidifying their dominance over Mediterranean trade. Culturally, the Fourth Crusade deepened the divide between the eastern and western branches of Christianity. The sack of Constantinople exacerbated the schism between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, creating a legacy of mistrust and hostility that would persist for centuries. The events of 1204 were seen by many in the East as a betrayal by their fellow Christians in the West, and the memory of the sack would remain a bitter point of contention in relations between the two halves of Christendom. Economically, the Fourth Crusade and the sack of Constantinople had a profound impact on Mediterranean trade. The redistribution of Byzantine wealth and the rise of Venice as a dominant maritime power shifted the center of gravity in Mediterranean commerce. The Venetians, now in control of crucial trade routes and resources, played a pivotal role in the economic life of the Mediterranean, facilitating the flow of goods between East and West and contributing to the rise of a more interconnected and prosperous Mediterranean economy. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the Fourth Crusade and the sack of Constantinople represent a key moment of transformation. The events of 1204 shattered the unity and strength of the Byzantine Empire, altering the political landscape of the region and paving the way for the rise of new powers in the Eastern Mediterranean. The consequences of the Fourth Crusade would be felt for generations, shaping the course of history in the region and leaving a legacy of division and conflict that would resonate for centuries. The rise of the Venetian Republic, 13th to 16th century dominance in Mediterranean trade. The ninth key moment is the rise of the Venetian Republic from the 13th to the 16th century, a period during which Venice emerged as a dominant maritime and trading power in the Mediterranean. Venice's strategic location, innovative trade practices, and political acumen allowed it to control key trade routes, influence regional politics, and become one of the wealthiest and most powerful states in Europe. Venice's rise to prominence began in the aftermath of the Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, when the Venetian Republic played a central role in the sack of Constantinople. The events of the Fourth Crusade provided Venice with significant territorial and commercial advantages. As a reward for its assistance in capturing Constantinople, Venice gained control over a network of key ports, islands, and trade routes in the Eastern Mediterranean, including Crete, Cyprus, and several islands in the Aegean Sea. These acquisitions laid the foundation for Venice's maritime empire, known as the Stato di Mare. Venice's strategic location at the northern end of the Adriatic Sea made it a natural hub for trade between Europe and the East. The city's unique geography, built on a series of islands and canals, provided both security and accessibility, allowing Venice to thrive as a commercial center. By the 13th century, Venice had established itself as a key player in the Mediterranean trade networks, facilitating the exchange of goods between the Byzantine Empire the Islamic world, and Western Europe. The Venetian Republic's success was built on a combination of shrewd diplomacy, military power, and economic innovation. The Venetians were skilled diplomats, adept at navigating the complex political landscape of the Mediterranean. They forged alliances and negotiated treaties with both Christian and Muslim states, ensuring that their trade routes remained open and secure. Venice's relationship with the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, for example, allowed it to dominate the spice trade, bringing valuable goods such as pepper, cinnamon, and cloves from the Indian Ocean to European markets. Venice's economic strength was further bolstered by its control over key maritime trade routes. The Venetians developed an extensive and sophisticated trading network, connecting the Mediterranean with the Black Sea, the Levant, and the Atlantic. Venetian galleys, known for their speed and maneuverability, became a common sight in ports across the Mediterranean, carrying a wide range of goods, including silk, spices, grains, and textiles. The city's merchants were renowned for their expertise in finance and trade, pioneering new methods of banking, credit, and insurance that would later influence the development of modern capitalism. One of the most significant aspects of Venice's rise was its role as a cultural and intellectual bridge between East and West. The city became a melting pot of cultures, where ideas, art, and knowledge from the Islamic world, the Byzantine Empire, and Western Europe converged. This cultural exchange was facilitated by Venice's extensive trading connections and its role as a center of manuscript production and book trade. The Venetians were instrumental in the transmission of classical knowledge, as well as the introduction of new scientific and philosophical ideas from the Islamic world to Europe. This exchange of knowledge played a crucial role in the Renaissance, a period of renewed interest in classical antiquity and intellectual advancement. Venice's political structure also contributed to its success. The Venetian Republic was governed by a unique system of oligarchic republicanism, with power concentrated in the hands of a small group of wealthy merchant families. The Doge, elected for life by the Venetian nobility, served as the head of state, but real power was exercised by the Great Council and the Senate, composed of representatives from the leading families. This system allowed Venice to maintain political stability and continuity, even during times of external threat or internal strife. The height of Venetian power came in the 15th and 16th centuries, when the city-state extended its influence beyond the Mediterranean. Venice's control over key maritime trade routes, combined with its economic and military prowess, allowed it to become a dominant force in the eastern Mediterranean. The Venetian Navy, one of the most powerful in the world at the time, played a crucial role in protecting the Republic's trade interests and defending its territories against rivals such as the Ottoman Empire. However, Venice's dominance in the Mediterranean was not without challenges. The rise of the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century posed a significant threat to Venetian interests. The Ottomans, under the leadership of sultans such as Mehmed II and Suleiman the Magnificent, sought to expand their control over the eastern Mediterranean, leading to a series of conflicts with Venice. The most notable of these was the prolonged struggle for control over Cyprus, which culminated in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. Although the Christian coalition, of which Venice was a part, won a decisive victory at Lepanto, the battle marked the beginning of the decline of Venetian naval power. Economically, Venice's fortunes began to wane in the late 16th century due to several factors. The discovery of new trade routes to the Americas and Asia by Portuguese and Spanish explorers shifted the center of global trade away from the Mediterranean. The rise of new powers in Northern Europe, particularly the Dutch and the English, further eroded Venice's commercial dominance. Additionally, the increasing pressure from the Ottoman Empire and the costs of maintaining its maritime empire strained Venice's resources. Despite these challenges, Venice remained a significant cultural and economic center well into the 17th century. The city's artistic and architectural achievements, particularly during the Renaissance, left a lasting legacy. Venice was home to some of the greatest artists, architects, and composers of the period, including Titian, Palladio, and Vivaldi. The city's unique blend of Gothic, Byzantine, and Renaissance styles is still visible in its iconic buildings, such as St. Mark's Basilica and the Doge's Palace. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the rise of Venice represents a key moment of transformation. The Venetian Republic's control over Mediterranean trade routes and its role as a cultural bridge between East and West had a profound impact on the development of the region. Venice's legacy as a center of commerce, culture, and innovation continues to influence the Mediterranean world to this day. The rise of the Venetian Republic also highlights the dynamic and interconnected nature of the Mediterranean during the medieval and early modern periods. The region was a complex mosaic of competing powers, cultures, and economies, each influencing and interacting with the others. Venice's ability to navigate this complex landscape and emerge as a dominant force is a testament to the city's resilience, adaptability, and ambition. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of Venice stands out as a remarkable example of how a small city-state on the fringes of Europe could rise to become a global power, shaping the course of history in the Mediterranean and beyond. The Ottoman Empire's entry into the Mediterranean, 15th to 16th century, the rise of a maritime power. The 10th key moment is the entry of the Ottoman Empire into the Mediterranean, a transformative period during the 15th and 16th centuries when the Ottomans emerged as a dominant maritime power. This era marked the beginning of a new chapter in Mediterranean history, as the Ottomans expanded their influence, challenging established European powers and reshaping the political, economic, and cultural dynamics of the region. The Ottoman Empire's rise to power began in the late 13th century, but it was not until the 15th century that the empire began to assert its influence in the Mediterranean. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was a pivotal moment in this expansion. Under the leadership of Sultan Mehmed II, also known as Mehmed the Conqueror, the Ottomans captured Constantinople, bringing an end to the East Rome Empire and establishing Istanbul as the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. This conquest not only marked the Ottomans' entry into the Mediterranean but also positioned them as the heirs to the Byzantine legacy, with control over key trade routes between Europe and Asia. With Constantinople as their capital, the Ottomans turned their attention to expanding their control over the eastern Mediterranean. Throughout the late 15th and early 16th centuries, the Ottomans systematically extended their influence over key territories, including the Balkans, Anatolia, and the Levant. They established a powerful navy, which played a crucial role in securing Ottoman dominance over the region's maritime trade routes. The Ottomans' growing presence in the Mediterranean was met with resistance from European powers, particularly the Venetian Republic, which had long dominated Mediterranean trade. The struggle between Venice and the Ottomans became one of the defining conflicts of the period, with both powers vying for control over strategic ports, islands, and trade routes. One of the earliest and most significant confrontations between the Ottomans and Venice occurred during the Ottoman-Venetian War of 1463 to 1479. This conflict was sparked by the Ottomans' expansion into the Peloponnese, which threatened Venetian interests in the region. The war saw numerous naval battles and sieges, including the Ottoman capture of the island of Negroponte, Euboea, in 1470, a significant blow to Venetian power. Despite Venetian resistance, the war ended with a treaty that confirmed Ottoman control over much of Greece and the Aegean Sea, solidifying their foothold in the eastern Mediterranean. The rise of the Ottoman navy was a key factor in the empire's expansion into the Mediterranean. The Ottomans invested heavily in their naval forces, building large fleets of galleys and warships that allowed them to project power across the region. The Ottoman navy was not only a military force but also a tool of economic and political influence, as it protected Ottoman trade routes and facilitated the transport of troops and supplies across the empire's vast territories. The Ottoman Empire reached the height of its power in the Mediterranean during the reign of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, 1520 to 1566. Under Suleiman's leadership, the empire expanded its territories further into North Africa and the eastern Mediterranean, becoming the dominant power in the region. Suleiman's reign is often regarded as the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, marked by significant military conquests, cultural achievements, and legal reforms. One of the most notable events of this period was the conquest of Rhodes in 1522. The island of Rhodes, controlled by the Knights Hospitaller, was a strategic outpost in the eastern Mediterranean and a thorn in the side of the Ottoman navy. After a prolonged siege, the Ottomans captured Rhodes, forcing the Knights to relocate to Malta. The fall of Rhodes was a significant victory for the Ottomans, as it secured their control over the eastern Mediterranean and eliminated a key base of operations for their European rivals. The conquest of Egypt in 1517 was another major milestone in the Ottoman expansion into the Mediterranean. The defeat of the Mamluk Sultanate not only brought Egypt under Ottoman control but also gave the Ottomans access to the Red Sea and the lucrative spice trade routes to the Indian Ocean. This expansion further strengthened the Ottoman position in the Mediterranean and allowed them to challenge Portuguese influence in the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Peninsula. The Ottomans' dominance in the Mediterranean was also marked by their control over the Barbary coast in North Africa. The cities of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli became important Ottoman bases from which corsairs, or privateers, launched raids against European ships and coastal towns. These corsairs, often referred to as Barbary pirates, played a significant role in the Ottoman strategy of disrupting European trade and weakening their rivals in the Mediterranean. The most famous of these corsairs was Hayreddin Barbarossa, who served as the Ottoman admiral and secured numerous victories against European fleets, further cementing Ottoman control over the western Mediterranean. The Battle of Preveza in 1538 was one of the most significant naval engagements of the period, solidifying Ottoman naval dominance in the Mediterranean. The battle was fought between the Ottoman fleet, commanded by Barbarossa, and a coalition of European powers led by the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Despite being outnumbered, the Ottoman fleet won a decisive victory, allowing them to maintain control over key sea routes and asserting their supremacy in the eastern Mediterranean. The Ottomans' control over the Mediterranean had far-reaching economic and cultural implications. The empire's dominance of the trade routes connecting Europe, Africa, and Asia allowed it to control the flow of goods, including spices, silk, and precious metals, which were highly sought after in European markets. This control over trade not only enriched the Ottoman treasury but also contributed to the economic prosperity of the empire's port cities, such as Istanbul, Alexandria, and Algiers. Culturally, the Ottoman Empire became a melting pot of diverse influences, reflecting the empire's vast territories and the interactions between different civilizations. The Mediterranean was a crossroads where Islamic, Christian, and Jewish cultures met, exchanged ideas, and influenced one another. The Ottomans were known for their patronage of the arts, architecture, and literature, and this cultural flourishing was evident in the great cities of the empire, where mosques, palaces, and public buildings reflected the grandeur and diversity of Ottoman civilization. However, the Ottomans' dominance in the Mediterranean was not unchallenged. The growing power of the Habsburgs in Spain and the Holy Roman Empire posed a significant threat to Ottoman interests. The rivalry between the Ottomans and the Habsburgs culminated in a series of conflicts known as the Ottoman-Habsburg Wars, which were fought on both land and sea. The most famous of these conflicts was the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, where a coalition of Christian powers defeated the Ottoman fleet in one of the largest naval battles in history. Although the Ottomans quickly rebuilt their navy after Lepanto, the battle marked the beginning of the decline of Ottoman naval supremacy in the Mediterranean. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the entry of the Ottoman Empire into the region represents a key moment of transformation. The Ottomans not only reshaped the political and military landscape of the Mediterranean but also contributed to the region's economic and cultural development. The empire's ability to integrate diverse peoples and cultures within its vast territories made it a significant force in the Mediterranean, influencing the region's history for centuries. The rise of the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean also highlights the dynamic and interconnected nature of the region during the early modern period. The Mediterranean was not just a battleground for competing powers, but also a space of exchange, where ideas, goods, and cultures flowed between East and West. The Ottomans' ability to navigate this complex landscape and assert their dominance is a testament to the empire's resilience, adaptability, and ambition. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Ottoman Empire's rise in the region stands out as a remarkable example of how a new power could emerge to challenge the established order and reshape the course of history. The Battle of Lepanto, 1571, the turning point in Mediterranean naval power. The 11th key moment is the Battle of Lepanto, which took place on October 7, 1571. This naval battle was one of the most significant conflicts in Mediterranean history, marking the first major defeat of the Ottoman navy and signaling the beginning of the decline of Ottoman naval dominance in the region. The battle not only reshaped the balance of power in the Mediterranean but also had profound implications for the future of naval warfare and the political landscape of Europe and the Ottoman Empire. The Battle of Lepanto was the result of escalating tensions between the Ottoman Empire and a coalition of Christian powers known as the Holy League. By the mid-16th century, the Ottomans had established themselves as the dominant naval power in the eastern Mediterranean, having secured control over key territories and trade routes. The expansion of Ottoman influence into the western Mediterranean, particularly in North Africa and the eastern Mediterranean islands, posed a direct threat to the interests of the Habsburg Empire, Spain, Venice, and the Papal States. The immediate catalyst for the Battle of Lepanto was the Ottoman siege of Famagusta, a Venetian-controlled city on the island of Cyprus. In 1570, the Ottomans launched an invasion of Cyprus, aiming to wrest control of the island from Venice. The siege of Famagusta was a brutal and protracted conflict, with the defenders holding out against overwhelming Ottoman forces for over a year. The fall of Famagusta in August 1571, after a bitter and bloody siege, shocked Europe and galvanized the formation of the Holy League, a military alliance organized by Pope Pius V to counter the Ottoman threat. The Holy League was composed of a coalition of European powers, including the Papal States, Spain, Venice, Genoa, and several other Italian states. The alliance was an unprecedented effort to unite the often fractious Christian states of Europe against a common enemy. The fleet assembled by the Holy League was one of the largest naval forces ever seen in the Mediterranean, consisting of over 200 galleys and a total of around 40,000 soldiers and sailors. The Ottoman fleet, commanded by the experienced Admiral Muazzin Zaid Ali Pasha, was equally formidable. The Ottoman Navy had been a dominant force in the Mediterranean for decades, and its commanders were confident in their ability to defeat the Christian fleet. The two navies met in the Gulf of Patras, near the western coast of Greece, in what would become one of the most decisive naval battles in history. The Battle of Lepanto was fought with a ferocity that shocked contemporaries. The two fleets clashed in a chaotic and brutal melee, with ships ramming each other and soldiers boarding enemy vessels in close-quarters combat. The battle was marked by intense fighting, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Holy League's fleet, commanded by Don John of Austria, the illegitimate son of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, employed innovative tactics, including the use of heavily armed galleasses, which were large, heavily fortified ships that acted as floating fortresses. Despite the formidable reputation of the Ottoman Navy, the battle turned in favor of the Holy League. The Christian fleet's superior firepower, combined with effective coordination and leadership, allowed them to gain the upper hand. The Ottoman fleet was eventually overwhelmed, with many of its ships destroyed or captured. The battle ended in a decisive victory for the Holy League, with the Ottomans losing over 200 ships and thousands of men, including their commander, Ali Pasha. The significance of the Battle of Lepanto cannot be overstated. It was the first major defeat of the Ottoman Navy in over a century and marked a turning point in the struggle for control of the Mediterranean. The battle effectively ended Ottoman naval expansion in the western Mediterranean and halted their advance into Europe. Although the Ottomans quickly rebuilt their navy after the battle, they were never able to fully recover their former dominance in the Mediterranean. The victory at Lepanto was celebrated across Europe as a triumph of Christian unity over the Ottoman threat. The battle was hailed as a divine intervention, with many viewing it as a sign that the tide was turning in the centuries-long conflict between Christendom and the Islamic world. The Pope declared a day of thanksgiving, and the battle was commemorated in numerous works of art, literature, and music, including the famous poem Lepanto by G.K. Chesterton, written much later but celebrating the battle's legacy. The Battle of Lepanto also had significant implications for the future of naval warfare. The battle marked the last major engagement in the Mediterranean, fought primarily with galleys, the oar-powered ships that had dominated naval warfare for centuries. The introduction of more advanced sailing ships and naval artillery in the following decades would gradually render galleys obsolete, ushering in a new era of naval warfare dominated by large, ocean-going ships capable of long-range combat. For the Ottoman Empire, the defeat at Lepanto was a serious blow, but it did not mark the end of their influence in the Mediterranean. The Ottomans remained a powerful force in the region, and their control over key territories in North Africa, the Levant, and the Aegean remained largely intact. However, the battle marked the beginning of a slow but steady decline in Ottoman naval power as the empire faced increasing challenges from European powers, particularly Spain and the emerging maritime powers of Northern Europe. The broader impact of the Battle of Lepanto on Mediterranean history is complex. While the battle was a significant military victory for the Holy League, it did not lead to a decisive shift in the balance of power in the region. The Ottomans continued to hold on to their territories, and the conflict between the Ottoman Empire and the European powers would continue for centuries, with both sides experiencing periods of expansion and contraction. Culturally, the Battle of Lepanto had a lasting impact on European identity and the collective memory of Christendom. The battle became a symbol of resistance against the Ottoman Empire and was celebrated as a victory of Western civilization over the forces of Islam. This legacy would continue to shape European perceptions of the Ottoman Empire and the broader Islamic world for generations. In the context of Mediterranean history, the Battle of Lepanto represents a key moment of transformation. It was a turning point in the centuries-long struggle for control of the Mediterranean, marking the end of Ottoman naval expansion and the beginning of a new era of European maritime dominance. The battle also highlighted the importance of naval power in shaping the political and economic landscape of the Mediterranean, a theme that would continue to define the region's history in the centuries to come. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Battle of Lepanto stands out as a dramatic and pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the broader world. The dominance of Barbarossa in the Mediterranean, 16th century securing Ottoman naval supremacy. The 12th key moment is the rise of Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha, also known as Barbarossa, as the preeminent naval commander of the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. His leadership and naval campaigns played a crucial role in securing and expanding Ottoman control over the Mediterranean, establishing a legacy that would define the region's maritime history for decades. Barbaros Hayreddin, born as Khizr or Khair ad-Din, was one of four brothers who initially made their name as corsairs in the Mediterranean. These brothers, Orik, Ishak, Ilyas, and Khizr, began their careers as privateers, targeting Christian ships and coastal towns, often under the sponsorship of the Ottoman Empire. Their operations were based in the Western Mediterranean, particularly in North Africa, where they established strongholds such as Algiers. The rise of the Barbarossa brothers coincided with the broader expansion of the Ottoman Empire into North Africa. The Ottomans sought to challenge the influence of Spain and other European powers in the region, and the Barbarossa brothers became key allies in this struggle. Orik, the eldest brother, took the lead in these efforts, capturing Algiers from the Spanish in 1516 and declaring himself Sultan of Algiers. After Orik's death in battle against the Spanish in 1518, Khizr assumed his brother's mantle, taking the name Hayreddin, which means best of the faithful, and becoming known as Barbarossa, Red Beard, due to his distinctive red beard. Barbaros Hayreddin quickly established himself as one of the most formidable naval commanders of his time. His base in Algiers became the center of Ottoman naval operations in the Western Mediterranean, and he led numerous raids and campaigns against European powers. The corsairs under his command targeted Spanish and Portuguese ships, capturing valuable cargoes and slaves, and attacking coastal settlements. These operations not only disrupted European trade but also asserted Ottoman influence over key maritime routes. The growing power of Barbarossa did not go unnoticed by the Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, who recognized the strategic importance of controlling the Mediterranean. In 1533, Suleiman appointed Barbarossa as the Capitan Pasha, Grand Admiral of the Ottoman Navy, formally incorporating him into the Ottoman state and giving him command over the empire's naval forces. This appointment marked a turning point in the history of the Mediterranean, as Barbarossa's leadership transformed the Ottoman Navy into a dominant force in the region. One of Barbarossa's most significant achievements was the defeat of the Holy League at the Battle of Preveza in 1538. The Holy League, a coalition of Christian states including Spain, Venice, and the Papal States, sought to challenge Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean. The battle, fought off the coast of Preveza in northwestern Greece, was a decisive Ottoman victory, with Barbarossa's fleet outmaneuvering and overwhelming the larger Christian fleet. The victory at Preveza secured Ottoman control over the eastern Mediterranean and established Barbarossa's reputation as the foremost naval commander of his era. Under Barbarossa's leadership, the Ottoman navy continued to expand its influence across the Mediterranean. He led successful campaigns in the Aegean Sea, the Adriatic, and the Tyrrhenian Sea, capturing numerous islands and coastal territories from European powers. Barbarossa's forces also played a key role in supporting Ottoman land campaigns, providing naval support for the conquest of North Africa and the Balkans. Barbarossa's dominance in the Mediterranean was not limited to military victories. He also played a crucial role in securing the empire's economic interests. The Mediterranean was the lifeblood of Ottoman trade, with ships carrying goods such as grain, silk, spices, and slaves between the empire's vast territories. Barbarossa's control over the sea lanes ensured that these trade routes remained secure and profitable, contributing to the economic prosperity of the Ottoman Empire. Barbarossa's influence extended beyond the battlefield. He was a shrewd diplomat, negotiating alliances and treaties with various European powers to further Ottoman interests. His ability to navigate the complex political landscape of the Mediterranean made him an invaluable asset to the Ottoman state. For instance, Barbarossa forged an alliance with France against the Habsburg Empire, a partnership that challenged the dominance of Spain and Austria in the region. The legacy of Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha in the Mediterranean is profound. His campaigns and victories solidified Ottoman control over the region, making the Mediterranean an Ottoman lake for much of the 16th century. The strength and reach of the Ottoman navy under his command allowed the empire to project power far beyond its borders, influencing the political and economic dynamics of the entire region. However, Barbarossa's impact on Mediterranean history extends beyond his military achievements. He became a legendary figure, celebrated in both Ottoman and European cultures as a symbol of naval prowess and strategic genius. His exploits were immortalized in literature, art, and folklore, and his name became synonymous with the golden age of Ottoman naval power. Culturally, the era of Barbarossa also marked a period of intense interaction between the Islamic and Christian worlds. The Mediterranean became a zone of both conflict and exchange, where different civilizations met, clashed, and influenced each other. The presence of Ottoman naval power in the Mediterranean facilitated the flow of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices between East and West, contributing to the rich and diverse cultural landscape of the region. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the dominance of Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha represents a key moment of transformation. His leadership and naval campaigns were instrumental in establishing Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean, reshaping the region's political and economic landscape. The impact of Barbarossa's legacy continued to be felt long after his death, influencing the course of Mediterranean history for generations. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of Barbarossa's rise and dominance stands out as a remarkable example of how individual leadership and strategic vision can alter the course of history. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign, 1798 to 1801, a clash of empires in the Mediterranean. The 13th key moment is Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian campaign, which took place between 1798 and 1801. This ambitious military expedition was intended to expand French influence in the Mediterranean and disrupt British access to India. However, the campaign had far-reaching consequences for the Mediterranean world, reshaping the geopolitical landscape and leading to significant shifts in power. The origins of the Egyptian campaign can be traced back to the broader context of the Napoleonic Wars, a series of conflicts that pitted revolutionary France against a coalition of European powers, including Britain, Austria, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. By the late 1790s, Napoleon Bonaparte, a brilliant and ambitious general, had risen to prominence in France and was eager to extend French power beyond Europe. His attention turned to the eastern Mediterranean, where he saw an opportunity to strike a blow against Britain, France's most formidable rival. Egypt was the focal point of Napoleon's plan. Situated at the crossroads of Africa and Asia, Egypt was a strategically vital region, controlling the overland route to India and the Red Sea. By capturing Egypt, Napoleon hoped to sever Britain's communications with India, thereby weakening its global empire and enhancing French influence in the Mediterranean and beyond. Napoleon's expedition set sail from Toulon in May 1798, with a fleet of over 300 ships carrying approximately 35,000 soldiers, along with a group of scholars and scientists who would study the ancient and modern wonders of Egypt. The expedition was a massive logistical undertaking, reflecting Napoleon's grand ambitions and his desire to emulate the conquests of Alexander the Great. The French fleet arrived in Alexandria in July 1798, quickly capturing the city with minimal resistance. From there, Napoleon's forces marched inland, advancing towards Cairo. The campaign's most famous battle, the Battle of the Pyramids, took place on July 21st, 1798, near the ancient pyramids of Giza. Napoleon's forces, employing innovative military tactics, decisively defeated the Mamluk forces, who were the ruling elite of Egypt under Ottoman suzerainty. The victory allowed Napoleon to take control of Cairo and establish French rule over Egypt. Napoleon's initial successes in Egypt were impressive, but they were soon overshadowed by a major setback. On August 1, 1798, the British Royal Navy, under the command of Admiral Horatio Nelson, launched a surprise attack on the French fleet at Aboukir Bay, near Alexandria. The resulting Battle of the Nile was a catastrophic defeat for the French, with most of their fleet destroyed or captured. The loss of naval supremacy left Napoleon's forces stranded in Egypt, cut off from reinforcements and supplies from France. Despite the loss of his fleet, Napoleon continued his campaign in Egypt, seeking to consolidate French control and expand his influence into the Levant. In early 1799, he launched an expedition into Syria, aiming to capture the key cities of Acre and Jaffa. However, this campaign met with fierce resistance from Ottoman forces, bolstered by British support. The Siege of Acre, in particular, proved to be a turning point. The city's defenders, led by the British officer Sir Sidney Smith, successfully repelled the French assault, forcing Napoleon to retreat back to Egypt. By this point, the Egyptian campaign was beginning to unravel. Napoleon's forces were stretched thin, facing both local resistance and the threat of Ottoman and British counterattacks. The harsh conditions of the Egyptian climate, coupled with disease and supply shortages, further weakened the French army. In August 1799, Napoleon made the decision to abandon his army in Egypt and return to France, leaving General Jean-Baptiste Kleber in command. Kleber attempted to hold the French position in Egypt, but the situation continued to deteriorate. In March 1801, a British-Ottoman coalition launched an invasion of Egypt, leading to a series of battles that culminated in the French surrender at Alexandria in September 1801. The remaining French forces were evacuated, bringing an end to the Egyptian campaign. The consequences of Napoleon's Egyptian campaign were far-reaching and complex. Although the campaign ultimately ended in failure for the French, it had significant implications for the Mediterranean and the wider world. For one, the campaign marked the beginning of the modern European interest in Egypt and the broader Middle East. The scholars and scientists who accompanied Napoleon's expedition conducted extensive research on the history, culture, and geography of Egypt, laying the groundwork for the field of Egyptology. Their discoveries, including the Rosetta Stone, which provided the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, sparked a fascination with ancient Egypt that continues to this day. The campaign also had important geopolitical consequences. The failure of the French to secure Egypt allowed Britain to maintain its dominance in the Mediterranean and protect its vital trade routes to India. The British victory at the Battle of the Nile established Admiral Nelson as a national hero and reinforced Britain's naval supremacy. The campaign further weakened the Ottoman Empire, which had struggled to defend its territories against European powers. The loss of Egypt, one of the empire's most important provinces, highlighted the decline of Ottoman power and foreshadowed the empire's eventual disintegration in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Culturally, the Egyptian campaign left a lasting impact on both France and Europe as a whole. The publication of the Description to El Egypti, a comprehensive account of the expedition's findings, captured the imagination of the European public and contributed to the Romantic movement's fascination with the exotic and the ancient. The campaign also influenced Napoleon's own image, as he sought to portray himself as a modern-day Alexander the Great, a leader capable of grand conquests and intellectual achievements. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, Napoleon's Egyptian campaign represents a key moment of transformation. It was a clash of empires and a contest for control over one of the most strategically important regions in the world. The campaign's failure demonstrated the limits of French power in the Mediterranean, while also highlighting the resilience of British naval supremacy. It also marked the beginning of a new phase of European imperialism in the Middle East, with lasting consequences for the region's political, economic, and cultural development. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of Napoleon's Egyptian campaign stands out as a dramatic and pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. The Greek War of Independence, 1821 to 1830, the birth of a nation in the Eastern Mediterranean. The 14th key moment is the Greek War of Independence, which took place between 1821 and 1830. This conflict was a pivotal event in the history of the Eastern Mediterranean, leading to the establishment of an independent Greek state and marking the beginning of the decline of Ottoman control in the region. The war had profound political, cultural, and social implications, both for Greece and for the broader Mediterranean world. The origins of the Greek War of Independence can be traced back to the late 18th and early 19th centuries, a period of growing national consciousness and political unrest within the Ottoman Empire. Influenced by the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, and the rising tide of nationalism in Europe, many Greeks began to envision the possibility of an independent state, free from Ottoman rule. Secret societies, such as the Filikiateria, Society of Friends, were formed to organize and coordinate efforts towards independence. The Ottoman Empire, which had ruled over Greece for nearly 4 centuries, was facing significant challenges by the early 19th century. The empire was plagued by internal corruption, economic difficulties, and external pressures from European powers. The decline of Ottoman authority in the Balkans created an opportunity for the Greeks to rise up and demand independence. The Greek War of Independence officially began on March 25, 1821, when the Bishop Germanos of Patras raised the Greek flag at the monastery of Agia Lavra in the Peloponnese, signaling the start of the revolt. The uprising quickly spread throughout the Peloponnese, central Greece, and the Aegean Islands, with Greek rebels, known as Klephts and Armataloi, taking up arms against the Ottoman forces. The initial successes of the Greek rebels were met with brutal reprisals from the Ottomans, who sought to suppress the revolt with harsh measures, including massacres of civilian populations, most notably the massacre of Chios in 1822. The struggle for Greek independence was marked by a series of bloody and protracted battles, sieges, and skirmishes. The Greeks faced significant challenges, including a lack of centralized leadership, limited resources, and internal divisions among the various factions. However, they were also fueled by a deep sense of national pride and determination, as well as support from Philhellenic movements in Europe. Many Europeans, inspired by the ideals of freedom and democracy, saw the Greek struggle as a noble cause and provided financial, military, and moral support to the Greek rebels. Prominent figures such as the British poet Lord Byron even traveled to Greece to join the fight, becoming symbols of the international support for the Greek cause. The tide of the war began to turn in favor of the Greeks in the mid-1820s, thanks in part to the intervention of the great powers, Britain, France, and Russia. These powers, motivated by a combination of strategic interests, humanitarian concerns, and public pressure, decided to intervene on behalf of the Greeks. The turning point came in 1827 with the Battle of Navarino, where a combined British, French, and Russian fleet decisively defeated the Ottoman-Egyptian fleet, effectively crippling Ottoman naval power in the Aegean. The victory at Navarino, coupled with continued pressure from the European powers, forced the Ottoman Empire to negotiate. The Treaty of London, signed in 1827, called for an armistice and the establishment of an autonomous Greek state under Ottoman suzerainty. However, the Greek leaders, buoyed by their successes and support from the European powers, continued to push for full independence. The final phase of the Greek War of Independence saw the intervention of the Russian Empire in the Russo-Turkish War of 1828 to 1829. The Russian victories against the Ottomans further weakened Ottoman control in the Balkans and the Eastern Mediterranean, leading to the eventual recognition of Greek independence. The London Protocol of 1830 formally established Greece as an independent sovereign state, with Prince Otto of Bavaria selected as the first king of Greece. The establishment of an independent Greece had significant implications for the Eastern Mediterranean and the broader region. Politically, the Greek War of Independence marked the first successful national liberation movement in the Balkans, setting a precedent for other nationalist movements in the Ottoman Empire. The war also exposed the vulnerabilities of the Ottoman state, which would continue to lose territories and influence throughout the 19th century as nationalist movements gained momentum. Culturally, the Greek War of Independence reignited a sense of Hellenic identity and pride. The new Greek state sought to revive the cultural and intellectual heritage of ancient Greece, which had been suppressed under Ottoman rule. The war also inspired a wave of Philhellenism in Europe, with artists, writers, and intellectuals celebrating the Greek struggle for freedom and drawing parallels between the modern Greek fight for independence and the ancient Greek ideals of democracy and liberty. Economically, the creation of an independent Greece opened new opportunities for trade and commerce in the eastern Mediterranean. The new Greek state sought to rebuild its economy, which had been devastated by years of war, by developing its agricultural, maritime, and industrial sectors. The Greek diaspora, which had played a crucial role in supporting the independence movement, also contributed to the economic revival of the new nation. The Greek War of Independence had a lasting impact on the balance of power in the Mediterranean. The weakening of Ottoman control in the region created a power vacuum that other European powers, particularly Britain and Russia, sought to fill. The Eastern Mediterranean became a theater of competition among these powers, with Greece emerging as a key player in the region's politics. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the Greek War of Independence represents a key moment of transformation. It marked the beginning of the end of Ottoman dominance in the Balkans and the rise of a new, independent state in the Eastern Mediterranean. The war also highlighted the growing influence of nationalism and the decline of multi-ethnic empires, trends that would continue to shape the region's history throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Greek War of Independence stands out as a pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. The opening of the Suez Canal, 1869, revolutionizing trade and geopolitics in the Mediterranean. The 15th key moment is the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, an event that profoundly transformed global trade routes and the geopolitical dynamics of the Mediterranean. The canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, provided a direct maritime route between Europe and Asia, drastically reducing the time and distance required for trade and military movements. The Suez Canal's creation marked a turning point in the history of the Mediterranean, reshaping its role as a crucial crossroads of global commerce and power. The idea of constructing a canal through the Isthmus of Suez, linking the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, had been considered for centuries. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, as well as various rulers throughout history, had explored the possibility of creating such a passage. However, it wasn't until the 19th century, during the height of European imperialism and the Industrial Revolution, that the project became feasible. The construction of the Suez Canal was spearheaded by French diplomat and engineer Ferdinand de Lesseps, who secured the support of both the Egyptian Khedive, Ismail Pasha, and the French government. In 1858, the Suez Canal Company was established to finance and oversee the construction of the canal. The project faced significant engineering challenges, including the need to excavate massive amounts of earth and navigate the complex terrain of the desert. However, with the use of advanced machinery and a large labor force, the canal was completed after a decade of work. The Suez Canal was officially opened on November 17, 1869, with a grand ceremony attended by dignitaries from around the world. The opening of the canal was a momentous occasion, celebrated as a triumph of human ingenuity and a symbol of the new era of global connectivity. The canal itself was a marvel of engineering, stretching approximately 120 miles, 193 kilometers, from Port Said on the Mediterranean coast to Suez on the Red Sea. Unlike other canals, the Suez Canal was built without locks, allowing ships to pass through without the need for elevation changes. The impact of the Suez Canal on global trade was immediate and profound. Prior to the canal's construction, ships traveling between Europe and Asia had to navigate around the southern tip of Africa, a journey that added thousands of miles and several weeks to the voyage. The Suez Canal provided a direct and much shorter route, reducing travel time between Europe and Asia by approximately 2/3. This not only facilitated the faster movement of goods and people, but also significantly lowered transportation costs, boosting international trade and economic growth. The opening of the Suez Canal also had major geopolitical implications. The canal quickly became one of the most strategically important waterways in the world, as it provided a vital link between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. Control over the canal became a key objective for European powers, particularly Britain and France, who sought to secure their interests in the region and maintain access to their colonies in Asia and Africa. Britain, in particular, recognized the strategic importance of the Suez Canal for maintaining its global empire, especially its vital trade routes to India, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. In 1875, facing financial difficulties, the Egyptian government sold its shares in the Suez Canal Company to Britain, giving the British government effective control over the canal. This move solidified Britain's dominant position in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, making the Suez Canal a linchpin of British imperial strategy. The Suez Canal also had a significant impact on the Ottoman Empire, which controlled Egypt as a nominally autonomous province. The canal's opening increased the strategic importance of Egypt, making it a focal point of European interest and intervention. The growing European presence in Egypt, coupled with the financial pressures of maintaining the canal, contributed to the weakening of Ottoman control over the region. In 1882, Britain effectively took control of Egypt, establishing a protectorate that would last until the mid-20th century. Economically, the Suez Canal revolutionized trade in the Mediterranean and beyond. The canal became a major artery for global commerce, with ships from Europe, Asia, and Africa passing through its waters en route to markets around the world. The canal facilitated the flow of goods such as textiles, spices, and raw materials, as well as the transport of oil, which became increasingly important in the 20th century. The economic benefits of the canal extended to the cities of the Mediterranean, particularly Port Said and Alexandria, which became major hubs of trade and industry. Culturally, the opening of the Suez Canal had a profound impact on the Mediterranean and the world. The canal symbolized the increasing interconnectedness of different regions and cultures, as it brought together people, goods, and ideas from across the globe. The canal also became a symbol of European technological prowess and imperial ambition, as it was seen as a testament to the ability of European powers to reshape the world according to their needs and desires. However, the Suez Canal also had significant social and environmental consequences. The construction of the canal involved the exploitation of thousands of laborers, many of whom were subjected to harsh working conditions and inadequate pay. The environmental impact of the canal was also significant, as it altered the natural landscape of the region and introduced new species into the Mediterranean, leading to ecological changes that are still felt today. The Suez Canal's strategic importance continued to grow throughout the 20th century, particularly during times of conflict. During both World War I and World War II, the canal was a critical supply route for the Allies, and its control was a major objective for both sides. The canal's importance was further highlighted during the Suez Crisis of 1956, when Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the canal, leading to a military intervention by Britain, France, and Israel. The crisis underscored the canal's continued significance as a geopolitical flashpoint and its role in the broader struggle for control over the Middle East. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the opening of the Suez Canal represents a key moment of transformation. The canal fundamentally altered the economic and geopolitical landscape of the Mediterranean, making it a central hub of global trade and a strategic focal point for competing powers. The canal's legacy continues to shape the region today, as it remains one of the most important waterways in the world and a symbol of the enduring significance of the Mediterranean in global affairs. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Suez Canal's opening stands out as a remarkable example of how human ingenuity and ambition can reshape the course of history and connect distant regions in new and profound ways. The unification of Italy, 1861. A new power emerges in the Western Mediterranean. The 16th key moment is the unification of Italy in 1861, a transformative event that brought together the various independent states and kingdoms of the Italian peninsula into a single nation-state. This unification not only created a new power in the Western Mediterranean but also had significant implications for the balance of power in Europe and the broader Mediterranean region. Italy's emergence as a unified state marked a key moment in the history of nationalism and set the stage for the country's involvement in the colonial competition that characterized the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The process of Italian unification, known as the Risorgimento, resurgence, was driven by a combination of nationalist sentiment, political maneuvering, and military action. The Italian peninsula had long been fragmented into a patchwork of states, including the Kingdom of Sardinia, the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, the Papal States, and several smaller duchies and principalities. These states were often under the influence or control of foreign powers, particularly Austria, which exerted significant authority over northern Italy. The unification movement gained momentum in the early 19th century, inspired by the ideals of the French Revolution and the growing sense of national identity among Italians. Key figures in the unification process included Giuseppe Mazzini, an ideologue and activist who promoted the idea of a united Italy through his organization, Young Italy; Count Camillo di Cavour, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Sardinia, who used diplomacy and strategic alliances to advance the cause of unification; and Giuseppe Garibaldi, a charismatic military leader whose campaigns in southern Italy were crucial to the success of the unification effort. The path to unification began in earnest with the leadership of Count Cavour, who sought to unify Italy under the leadership of the Kingdom of Sardinia and its ruler, King Victor Emmanuel II. Cavour's strategy involved forming alliances with other European powers, particularly France, to weaken Austrian influence in northern Italy. The Second Italian War of Independence, fought in 1859 with the support of France, resulted in significant territorial gains for the Kingdom of Sardinia, including the annexation of Lombardy. The unification process accelerated in 1860 when Giuseppe Garibaldi led his famous expedition of the Thousand, Spedizione dei Mille, a volunteer army that landed in Sicily and quickly overthrew the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Garibaldi's successful campaign in the south brought much of the southern Italian peninsula under the control of the unification movement. In a gesture of national unity, Garibaldi handed over his conquests to King Victor Emmanuel II, paving the way for the proclamation of the Kingdom of Italy in March 1861. The unification of Italy was not completed with the proclamation of the kingdom in 1861. Significant portions of Italian-speaking territories, including Venice and Rome, remained outside the new state's control. Venice was annexed in 1866 following the Austro-Prussian War, in which Italy allied with Prussia against Austria. The final act of unification occurred in 1870 when Italian forces captured Rome, which had been under the control of the Papal States and protected by French troops. Rome was declared the capital of Italy, symbolizing the completion of the unification process. The unification of Italy had profound implications for the Mediterranean region. As a newly unified state, Italy quickly sought to assert itself as a significant power in the Western Mediterranean. The country's strategic location, with extensive coastlines along the Tyrrhenian and Adriatic seas, made it a key player in Mediterranean affairs. Italy's entry into the international arena was marked by its participation in the colonial competition that characterized the late 19th century, as European powers scrambled to expand their empires in Africa and Asia. Italy's colonial ambitions were driven by a desire to secure its place among the great powers of Europe and to address economic and social challenges at home. The Italian government, under the leadership of King Victor Emmanuel II and later Prime Minister Giovanni Giolitti, pursued a policy of expansionism, seeking to establish colonies in North Africa and the Horn of Africa. Italy's first major colonial venture was the conquest of Eritrea in 1885, followed by the acquisition of Somalia. The most significant and contentious of Italy's colonial ambitions was the invasion of Libya in 1911, which resulted in the Italo-Turkish War and the eventual annexation of Libya as an Italian colony. The unification of Italy also had significant domestic implications. The process of unification brought together regions with distinct languages, cultures, and histories, leading to challenges in creating a cohesive national identity. The economic disparities between the industrialized North and the agrarian South, known as the Southern Question Meridionale, became a persistent issue in Italian politics. The new Italian state also faced the challenge of integrating the Catholic Church, which had opposed the unification movement and maintained significant influence over Italian society. Despite these challenges, the unification of Italy marked a key moment in the history of nationalism and the creation of modern nation-states. The success of the Risorgimento inspired nationalist movements across Europe and beyond, contributing to the reshaping of the political map of Europe in the 19th and 20th centuries. Italy's emergence as a unified state also contributed to the broader trends of imperialism and colonialism that defined the Mediterranean region during this period. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the unification of Italy represents a key moment of transformation. It marked the rise of a new power in the Western Mediterranean, one that would play a significant role in the region's political, economic, and military affairs. The unification of Italy also reflected the broader shifts in European politics and society, as nationalist movements and the decline of multi-ethnic empires reshaped the continent. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of Italy's unification stands out as a pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. The Italo-Turkish War, 1911 to 1912, Italy's colonial ambitions, and the Ottoman Empire's decline. The 17th key moment is the Italo-Turkish War, also known as the Tripolitanian War, which took place between 1911 and 1912. This conflict was a significant event in the history of the Mediterranean, marking Italy's aggressive push to expand its colonial empire in North Africa and signaling the continuing decline of the Ottoman Empire. The war resulted in the Italian annexation of Libya, a strategically important region in the Mediterranean, and had far-reaching consequences for both Italy and the Ottoman Empire. The origins of the Italo-Turkish War can be traced back to the late 19th century, during a period of intense imperial competition among European powers. Italy, which had only recently unified in 1861, was eager to establish itself as a major power in Europe and to secure its place in the colonial race. However, Italy had been relatively late to the scramble for Africa, and by the early 20th century, most of the continent had already been claimed by other European powers. This left Italy with few opportunities for expansion, and the country turned its attention to Libya, one of the last remaining Ottoman territories in North Africa. Libya, consisting of the regions of Tripolitania, Cyrenaica, and Fezzan, was strategically located on the southern shores of the Mediterranean, just across from Italy. Although it was technically under Ottoman control, Libya was poorly defended and only loosely governed by the Ottoman authorities. The region's proximity to Italy and its perceived economic potential made it an attractive target for Italian expansionists, who saw the acquisition of Libya as a way to enhance Italy's prestige and secure valuable resources. The pretext for war was provided by a series of diplomatic and military maneuvers in 1911. Italy demanded that the Ottoman Empire transfer control of Libya to Italy, citing the need to protect Italian citizens and interests in the region. When the Ottomans refused, Italy declared war on September 29, 1911, launching a series of amphibious assaults on the Libyan coast. The Italian invasion force, supported by a modern navy and army, quickly captured the key coastal cities of Tripoli, Benghazi, and Derna. However, the Italian advance into the interior of Libya was met with fierce resistance from local Arab and Berber tribes, who were often supported by Ottoman officers and troops. The Italian forces found themselves bogged down in a protracted guerrilla war, facing difficult terrain and a determined enemy. Despite the initial challenges, Italy eventually secured control over the major coastal regions of Libya. The Italian military used a combination of modern technology, including airplanes and armored vehicles, to suppress the resistance and consolidate their hold on the territory. The war also saw the first significant use of aerial bombardment in military history, as Italian aircraft were used to attack Ottoman and tribal positions. The Italo-Turkish War had significant implications for both Italy and the Ottoman Empire. For Italy, the war was seen as a major victory, and the annexation of Libya was celebrated as a triumph of Italian arms and a symbol of Italy's newfound status as a colonial power. The war also boosted national pride and helped to solidify the authority of the Italian government, which had faced domestic challenges in the years leading up to the conflict. However, the Italian occupation of Libya would prove to be more difficult and costly than anticipated. The resistance from the local population continued long after the formal end of the war, and Italy faced ongoing challenges in maintaining control over the vast and sparsely populated territory. The war also marked the beginning of a long and often brutal colonial rule in Libya, which would have lasting consequences for the region's history and development. For the Ottoman Empire, the Italo-Turkish War was a significant blow. The loss of Libya marked one of the last major territorial losses for the empire in North Africa, and it highlighted the ongoing decline of Ottoman power. The war also exposed the weaknesses of the Ottoman military and the empire's inability to defend its far-flung territories against European aggression. The defeat in Libya further weakened the already fragile Ottoman state, contributing to the growing sense of crisis that would eventually lead to the empire's collapse during World War I. The Italo-Turkish War also had broader geopolitical consequences for the Mediterranean region. The conflict heightened tensions among the European powers and contributed to the growing instability in the Balkans, where nationalist movements were increasingly challenging Ottoman rule. The war also foreshadowed the larger conflicts that would soon engulf Europe, as the rivalries and ambitions of the great powers led to a series of crises and ultimately to the outbreak of World War I. Economically, the annexation of Libya provided Italy with a new colonial possession that it hoped would contribute to its economic growth. However, the anticipated economic benefits of Libya were slow to materialize, and the costs of maintaining the colony often outweighed the revenues generated by its resources. The challenges of governing and developing Libya would continue to be a source of difficulty for Italy in the years to come. Culturally, the Italo-Turkish War had a lasting impact on both Italy and Libya. In Italy, the war was remembered as a significant moment in the country's national history, and it contributed to the development of Italian nationalism and imperial identity. In Libya, the war and the subsequent Italian occupation were deeply traumatic events that shaped the country's struggle for independence and its relationship with the wider Arab world. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the Italo-Turkish War represents a key moment of transformation. It marked the end of Ottoman control in North Africa and the beginning of a new era of European imperialism in the region. The war also highlighted the growing importance of the Mediterranean as a theater of competition among the great powers, a trend that would continue throughout the 20th century. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Italo-Turkish War stands out as a pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. World War I in the Mediterranean, 1914 to 1918 strategic conflicts and consequences. The 18th key moment is the impact of World War I on the Mediterranean from 1914 to 1918. This period saw the Mediterranean region become a critical battleground where control of sea routes, key territories, and strategic points shaped the course of the war. The Mediterranean was not only a site of naval battles but also an area of significant land conflicts, especially within the Ottoman Empire, which was a member of the Central Powers. One of the most pivotal campaigns in the Mediterranean during World War I was the Gallipoli Campaign, also known as the Dardanelles Campaign. This operation, which took place from April 1915 to January 1916, was launched by the Allied powers with the goal of capturing the Dardanelles Strait. The objective was to open a sea route to Russia, capture Constantinople, and knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. The campaign began with a naval assault that failed to break through Ottoman defenses, leading to a land invasion on the Gallipoli Peninsula. The land campaign quickly turned into a deadly stalemate. The Allied forces, composed of British, French, Australian, and New Zealand troops, encountered fierce resistance from the Ottoman army, which was led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The challenging terrain, coupled with strong Ottoman fortifications and determined defense, made progress difficult for the Allies. The harsh conditions, including disease and supply shortages, further compounded the difficulties. After months of intense and costly fighting, the Allies were forced to withdraw, marking a significant victory for the Ottoman Empire and a major defeat for the Allies. The failure of the Gallipoli campaign had far-reaching consequences. For the Ottoman Empire, it was a crucial victory that helped prolong its involvement in the war. It also solidified the reputation of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who would later become the founder of modern Turkey. For the Allies, the defeat was a severe blow to morale and strategic planning, and it prolonged the conflict in the Mediterranean. Naval warfare was also a critical aspect of the Mediterranean during World War I. The Central Powers, particularly Germany, used submarines to disrupt Allied shipping in the Mediterranean. These U-boat attacks targeted merchant vessels and naval ships, aiming to cut off supplies and reinforcements to the Allied forces. The use of submarines introduced a new and deadly element to naval warfare, threatening the security of sea routes and contributing to the broader conflict. The Allies responded by organizing convoys and increasing their naval patrols to protect their ships, but the submarine threat remained a significant challenge throughout the war. The Mediterranean also witnessed significant land battles, particularly in the Balkans. The region saw a series of conflicts as the Central Powers sought to secure their control over southeastern Europe. In response, the Allies attempted to open new fronts, most notably through the landing of troops in Salonika, Thessaloniki, in 1915. These operations aimed to support Serbia and other Balkan allies, but the harsh conditions and difficult terrain made progress slow and costly. The conflict in the Balkans drained resources from both sides and added to the overall complexity of the war in the Mediterranean. The Italian front was another crucial area of conflict in the Mediterranean region. Italy, which joined the Allies in 1915, engaged in a series of brutal battles against Austria-Hungary along their mountainous border. The fighting was characterized by heavy casualties and little territorial gain, with both sides enduring harsh conditions in the rugged terrain. The Italian front contributed to the exhaustion of both the Central Powers and the Allies, weakening their ability to sustain prolonged conflict. The end of World War I brought significant changes to the Mediterranean. The defeat of the Central Powers led to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the redrawing of borders across the region. The Treaty of Sèvres in 1920, followed by the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, dismantled the Ottoman territories and established new nation-states in the Middle East and the Balkans. The creation of mandates under the League of Nations placed much of the former Ottoman territories under British and French control, reshaping the political landscape of the Mediterranean. The war also had profound social and economic consequences for the Mediterranean. The destruction caused by the conflict, coupled with the collapse of empires, led to widespread displacement, economic hardship, and political instability. The rise of nationalist movements in the post-war period, particularly in the Balkans and the Middle East, set the stage for further conflicts and the eventual decolonization of the region. Culturally, World War I left a lasting impact on the Mediterranean, shaping the collective memory and national identities of the countries involved. The war and its aftermath were commemorated in literature, art, and public memorials, reflecting the profound sense of loss and trauma experienced by the populations of the Mediterranean. The legacy of the war also influenced the political and social developments of the interwar period, as nations in the region grappled with the challenges of rebuilding and redefining their place in the world. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, World War I represents a key moment of transformation. The conflict brought the Mediterranean into the center of a global struggle for power, highlighting the strategic importance of the region and its role in shaping the outcome of the war. The war also marked the beginning of a new era in Mediterranean history, characterized by the decline of empires, the rise of new nation-states, and the increasing involvement of global powers in the region's affairs. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of World War I in the Mediterranean stands out as a pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. World War II in the Mediterranean, 1939 to 1945, a strategic battleground. The 19th key moment is the Mediterranean theater during World War II, spanning from 1939 to 1945. This period saw the Mediterranean become a critical battleground where the Allies and Axis powers fought for control over strategic sea routes, territories, and resources. The Mediterranean played a central role in the larger conflict, influencing the course of the war and shaping the post-war world order. The Mediterranean was of immense strategic importance during World War II due to its location as a crossroads between Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Control over the Mediterranean allowed for the movement of troops, supplies, and oil, which was crucial for both the Axis and Allied war efforts. The Mediterranean Sea itself was a vital maritime route for the British Empire, linking the United Kingdom with its colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. For the Axis powers, particularly Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, gaining control over the Mediterranean was seen as essential to cutting off British access to these territories and securing their own strategic interests. One of the most significant campaigns in the Mediterranean during World War II was the North African Campaign, which lasted from 1940 to 1943. This campaign involved a series of battles between the Axis powers, led by Germany and Italy, and the Allied forces, primarily composed of British and Commonwealth troops. The North African Campaign was centered around the control of the Suez Canal and the oil-rich Middle East, as well as access to the Mediterranean Sea. The campaign began in earnest in 1940 when Italian forces, under the command of Marshal Rodolfo Graziani, launched an invasion of British-controlled Egypt from their base in Libya. The initial Italian advance was met with a swift counteroffensive by British forces, who pushed the Italians back into Libya. The situation changed dramatically in 1941 when Nazi Germany intervened to support its Italian ally, sending the Afrika Korps under the command of General Erwin Rommel. Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, quickly turned the tide of the campaign, launching a series of bold and highly effective offensives that pushed the British forces back towards Egypt. The battles in North Africa were characterized by their intensity and the challenging desert environment. Both sides faced difficulties with logistics, supply lines, and the harsh conditions of the desert, which tested the endurance and resilience of the troops involved. The campaign saw several key battles, including the Siege of Tobruk, where Australian and British forces held out against a prolonged Axis assault, and the First and Second Battles of El Alamein in 1942, which proved to be turning points in the campaign. The Second Battle of El Alamein, fought in October 1942, was particularly significant. Under the leadership of British General Bernard Montgomery, the Allied forces launched a decisive offensive against Rommel's Afrika Korps. The battle ended in a major victory for the Allies, forcing the Axis forces to retreat westward across Libya and eventually leading to their complete expulsion from North Africa by May 1943. The victory at El Alamein was celebrated as a turning point in the war, marking the beginning of the end for the Axis powers in the Mediterranean. In addition to the North African Campaign, the Mediterranean theater also saw significant naval and air operations. The Axis powers, particularly Italy, sought to challenge British naval dominance in the Mediterranean, leading to a series of naval engagements. The most notable of these was the Battle of Taranto in November 1940, where British carrier-based aircraft launched a surprise attack on the Italian fleet at anchor in Taranto harbor, crippling several Italian battleships and weakening Italian naval power. The Mediterranean was also the site of Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943. This operation marked the beginning of the Allied campaign to liberate Italy from Axis control. The successful invasion of Sicily led to the fall of Mussolini's fascist regime and the eventual surrender of Italy in September 1943. The invasion of Italy opened a new front in the war, with Allied forces advancing up the Italian peninsula in a series of hard-fought battles against German forces. The Mediterranean played a crucial role in the broader strategy of the Allies, serving as a staging ground for invasions and a vital supply route. The control of the Mediterranean allowed the Allies to launch operations in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy, and to support resistance movements in occupied territories such as Greece and Yugoslavia. The Axis powers, on the other hand, faced increasing difficulties in maintaining their positions in the Mediterranean as the war progressed, with their supply lines being constantly threatened by Allied naval and air forces. The impact of World War II on the Mediterranean was profound and far-reaching. The war led to significant changes in the political and social landscape of the region. The defeat of the Axis powers in North Africa and Italy resulted in the collapse of fascist regimes and the liberation of occupied territories. The war also accelerated the decline of European colonial empires in the Mediterranean as nationalist movements gained momentum and called for independence in countries such as Egypt, Libya, and Algeria. Economically, the Mediterranean region was severely affected by the war, with widespread destruction of infrastructure, cities, and industries. The post-war period saw significant efforts to rebuild and recover, but the legacy of the conflict continued to shape the region's development for decades. The war also contributed to the reshaping of international relations, with the Mediterranean becoming a key area of Cold War competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. Culturally, the experience of World War II left a deep imprint on the collective memory of the Mediterranean peoples. The war and its aftermath were commemorated in literature, film, and public monuments, reflecting the profound impact of the conflict on the region's history and identity. The war also influenced the post-war generation, shaping their views on peace, conflict, and international cooperation. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, World War II represents a key moment of transformation. The conflict brought the Mediterranean to the forefront of global warfare, highlighting its strategic importance and its role in shaping the outcome of the war. The war also marked the beginning of a new era in Mediterranean history, characterized by the decline of European colonialism, the rise of new nation-states, and the emergence of the Mediterranean as a central arena in the Cold War. As we continue our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of World War II in the Mediterranean stands out as a pivotal episode, one that had far-reaching consequences for the future of the region and the world. The Arab-Israeli Wars, 20th century shaping the modern Eastern Mediterranean. The 20th key moment is the series of Arab-Israeli wars that took place during the 20th century, beginning in 1948. These conflicts between the newly established State of Israel and neighboring Arab states fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean and have lasting implications for the region's political, social, and economic dynamics. The roots of the Arab-Israeli conflict can be traced back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism. The Zionist movement sought the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, then part of the Ottoman Empire and later under British mandate following World War I. Tensions between Jewish and Arab populations in Palestine escalated throughout the 1920s and 1930s, culminating in the United Nations Partition Plan of 1947, which proposed the creation of separate Jewish and Arab states. The First Arab-Israeli War, also known as the War of Independence or the Nakba, catastrophe in Arabic, began in 1948, immediately following the declaration of the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. The conflict saw Israel defending its newly declared independence against a coalition of Arab states, including Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. The war was marked by intense fighting, with both sides committing significant resources to the conflict. By the end of the war in 1949, Israel had not only survived, but had also expanded its territory beyond the borders proposed by the UN partition plan. The armistice agreements that followed established Israel's borders with its neighbors, but these borders remained contested and unresolved, laying the groundwork for future conflicts. The second major conflict, the Suez Crisis of 1956, was triggered by the nationalization of the Suez Canal by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. The crisis involved a brief war between Israel, Britain, and France on one side, and Egypt on the other. Israel invaded the Sinai Peninsula, while Britain and France sought to regain control of the canal. Although the military objectives were achieved, international pressure, particularly from the United States and the Soviet Union, forced Israel, Britain, and France to withdraw. The crisis highlighted the strategic importance of the Suez Canal and underscored the complex interplay of regional and global powers in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Six-Day War of 1967 was one of the most significant conflicts in the Arab-Israeli struggle. In June 1967, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, following increasing tensions and military mobilizations in the region. The war lasted only 6 days, but had a profound impact on the region. Israel achieved a decisive victory, capturing the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the Golan Heights from Syria, and the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan. The territorial gains from the Six-Day War drastically altered the political landscape of the Middle East and deepened the animosity between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The war also led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, further exacerbating the refugee crisis in the region. The Yom Kippur War of 1973, also known as the October War, was another major conflict that shaped the Eastern Mediterranean. On October 6, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur, aiming to reclaim the territories lost in the Six-Day War. The war caught Israel off guard, leading to significant initial losses. However, Israel eventually regrouped and managed to repel the attacks, pushing deep into Syrian and Egyptian territory. The war ended in a ceasefire brokered by the United States and the Soviet Union, but it underscored the volatility of the region and the high stakes involved in the Arab-Israeli conflict. The Arab-Israeli wars had far-reaching consequences for the Eastern Mediterranean and the broader Middle East. Politically, the wars entrenched the division between Israel and the Arab states, leading to decades of hostility, military buildup, and intermittent violence. The conflict also fueled the rise of Palestinian nationalism and the struggle for self-determination, which became a central issue in Middle Eastern politics. The displacement of Palestinian populations during the wars created a persistent refugee crisis, contributing to instability and tension in the region. Economically, the wars had significant impacts on the countries involved, particularly in terms of military spending and the costs of reconstruction. The conflict also affected the broader global economy, particularly during the 1973 oil crisis, when Arab oil producers imposed an oil embargo on countries supporting Israel. The embargo led to skyrocketing oil prices and highlighted the strategic importance of the Middle East's energy resources. Culturally, the Arab-Israeli wars left a deep imprint on the societies involved, shaping national identities and collective memories. The conflicts were commemorated in various forms, including literature, film, and public memorials, reflecting the profound impact of the wars on the region's history and identity. The wars also influenced the political discourse in the Middle East, as well as the policies of external powers involved in the region. The peace process, which began in the late 20th century, marked a shift in the dynamics of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The Camp David Accords of 1978 led to the signing of a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt in 1979, making Egypt the first Arab country to officially recognize Israel. The Oslo Accords of the 1990s represented another significant attempt to resolve the conflict, leading to the establishment of the Palestinian Authority and the framework for a two-state solution. However, despite these efforts, a comprehensive peace agreement has remained elusive, and the region continues to experience periodic violence and political instability. In the broader context of Mediterranean history, the Arab-Israeli wars represent a key moment of transformation. The conflicts fundamentally altered the political and social landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean, shaping the region's modern history and its relations with the rest of the world. The wars also highlighted the strategic importance of the Mediterranean as a site of international competition and conflict, with far-reaching implications for global politics. As we conclude our exploration of the key moments that shaped the Mediterranean, the story of the Arab-Israeli Wars stands out as a critical episode, one that continues to influence the dynamics of the region and the world today. The Mediterranean has been one of the most significant regions in human history, serving as the cradle of civilizations for thousands of years. This sea is not merely a geographic boundary, but a crossroads where cultures, religions, and ideas have met and intertwined. From ancient empires to modern nations, the shores of the Mediterranean have witnessed events that have shaped the course of world history. It has been both a unifying bridge and a battleground for struggles, making it a pivotal area in the story of humanity. Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey through the history of the Mediterranean. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the events that have shaped our world.